Welcome back, horror lovers. Tonight, we bring you a chilling compilation of true dark web stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat. So, grab your blanket and prepare yourself for in 180 minutes. Our first sinister story takes us to the deep corners of the internet. Here unsuspecting victims stumble upon a website that promises secrets of the dark arts. Little do they know what horrors await them in the shadows. We expose a disturbing website that trades in unspeakable acts of cruelty and torture. Behind the anonymity of the dark web, sick individuals satisfy their twisted desires for sadistic pleasure. Thank you for joining us on this terrifying journey through the dark web's most chilling stories. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more spine-tingling content. Stay safe out there, and never forget, evil lurks in the darkest corners. Good night, horror fans. Allow me to just preface this by saying that I never used the deep web for anything too bad. I never bought drugs. I never stole movies or music. Hell, I rarely even looked at porn. I had the most generous wife you could ever imagine. I honestly didn't need porn with a woman like that in my life. I had always been fascinated by computers, but the town I grew up in was a small hick town at that. I remember hearing about computers and the internet, and the idea of it blew me away. Being able to access information from anywhere in the world was amazing, and it astounded me that it wasn't embraced and pursued by more people. So, I not only lived in a technology desert, but my family wasn't exactly rich either. My mom slaved away at a large corporation where she was paid much less than she was worth. My dad worked various odd jobs, but always invested most of his time into the local church. He was a stereotypical Bible thumper, and as one might expect, I grew to resent the religion. I always felt like religion was a one-way street. They expected me to pray to and serve some deity in the sky, and all those who don't would burn in hell. My interest in history led me to the realization that every religion was similar in that regard. And that, for me, was enough to dismiss them all. Thankfully, they raised my sister and me to work hard. We both went to college and got decent jobs. She became a nurse and moved to New York. I followed my passion for history, and eventually became a world history teacher at a small high school. I married my high school sweetheart shortly after getting my teaching job, and we moved into a more populated suburb not too far from where I grew up. We found a nice house that was close enough to both of our jobs. My wife and I had been saving up money because we were trying to have a child, although it was taking longer than we thought. After about a year of trying, we saw a doctor. He said that we were both able and healthy, but it would take some more time. This was almost nice in a way because we had more money than we needed for when the baby came. I decided to take a few $100s and get the computer I'd been dreaming about for years. I was so excited when my wife agreed that I should. We couldn't raise a kid in this day and age without a computer after all, right? Well, I put it in our home office, and I quickly became enamored with the thing. I can honestly say that my life would have been so much better if I had one of these growing up. I could literally learn anything in the world I wanted. I found myself reading dozens of articles, speeches, books, and watching tutorials. I could not have been any happier. Time marched on and I found myself finishing up the semester and getting ready for the summer. It got pretty boring, honestly. I still got paid for it, but because the school was such a crappy district, there weren't many things for teachers to get involved in over the summer. That was when my genuine interest in the internet became something of an addiction. I was on that thing at nearly all hours of the day. Since my wife and I were still trying to have a baby, we were having sex like two animals. Life could not have gotten any better. Unfortunately, when things get that good, they can only get worse. It was a month and a half through the summer vacation when I found myself reading the same shit on the internet. There was nothing new, or at the very least nothing worth learning about. However, I did recall hearing about something strange. It was called the Deepweb. I never studied it in depth, but I eventually had a basic understanding of it. I downloaded Tor and started looking around online. I made sure to be extra careful because I have heard stories of people being stalked, kidnapped, or even killed from using the deep web. I found myself staring at dozens of random links on the hidden wiki at 3 o'clock in the morning. I kept clicking away until anything useful came up. I did end up finding a lot of mathematics and science stuff, but I'm a history teacher. I'd rather learn about history. A few more hours of searching and I found something that at least remotely piqued my interest. It was a conspiracy theory page. Now I don't consider myself to be anything of a conspiracy theorist, nor am I the least bit paranoid about things like the Illuminati. But these were some of the most solid arguments for foul play from the government I had ever seen. There were classified documents, in-depth research, and an overwhelming amount of evidence for almost every theory I saw. Don't get me wrong, there were a few that seemed a bit far-fetched, but the vast majority of them made some damn good arguments. Eventually, I couldn't hold my eyes open any longer and had to go to bed. I powered down my computer and, as quiet as a mouse, crawled into bed with my tender, loving wife. I felt a bit of a void between us though. She never had the lust for knowledge like I did, and if I were to ever tell her about the crazy and interesting things I read online, she'd playfully tease me that she was falling asleep or something to that effect. The next day, I was right back on the deep web looking for new things to widen my worldview. Nearly an hour had gone by and all I had found was a bunch of broken links. I was about to sign off when a box appeared in the corner of my screen with a link in it. Being as naive as I was, I clicked on it. I was absolutely mortified at what I saw next. At first glance, I thought the abomination on my computer screen was some kind of a torture video. No! I was dead wrong. A toddler whimpered as he sat there gagged and bound. Covered in blood and piss, he begged the man in frame to stop, but to no avail. A deranged man in a Guy Fawkes mask stared at the camera as he thrust his body to and fro. A few seconds went by when the man finished, and he got up to do a strange dance. If there was a cross between a football player's victory dance and a circus clown's opening act, the resulting atrocity might resemble the strange act the man performed over that poor child. To my horror, I realized it was a live feed hooked up to a webcam with a live chat box on the side. It took a few minutes for the shocking realization to fully wash over me. After I'd collected myself, I foolishly started to read what was in the live chat box. The most horrid and disgusting things you can imagine were being requested. I had a hard time believing that real people were behind a keyboard somewhere in the world typing these things. I really don't want to go into too much detail about what they were saying. It suddenly dawned on me that I could just close this shit and be over with it. I jolted the mouse and clicked to X out the page, but nothing happened. I felt my stomach drop. What the hell is going on? I kept asking myself. I'd never heard of anything like this happening. I was about to manually reboot my computer when the man from the video stream called out my full name. Leaving so soon, Mr. Edwards? Off to teach another history lesson at that little shithole you call a high school? He asked in a rough, distorted tone. I had no idea what to do. I clicked every button on the computer, keyboard, and mouse. No matter what I did, there was no reaction. I heard him start reading off my credit card information and I had enough. I unplugged my computer from the back and powered it down. It was a relief to have finally left that nightmare of a web page. I was in awe at the speed he was able to get my personal information. I changed my credit card number and any other information I could. My wife was a bit suspicious, but she didn't pry too much at it. We had a very trusting relationship, and I didn't want to frighten her, so I kept the incident to myself. A few days went by and I didn't even go into my office. I left my computer in there unplugged, admittedly scared to turn that damn thing on ever again. I knew I'd have to eventually face my fear, so I entered the office. I booted her up and everything seemed to be normal. I deleted Tor and made sure to be done with the deep web. I casually loaded up Google Chrome and everything seemed to be perfectly fine. Nothing seemed to come to fruition from my little mishap and decided I was going to be safe after all. Oh, how wrong I was. About 5 months later, my wife's sister ended up moving in. She really was such a pleasant woman, and we did have extra space, so we decided to allow her to stay with us. It was just a few weeks later that my wife and I got the good news. She was pregnant. She was already a couple weeks in, and she and the baby were both healthy and in good shape. It was the best feeling in the world getting that news. I had gotten back into the swing of things with my job and occasionally reading some decent articles on the internet. It wasn't long before we were days away from the birth of our daughter. I had completely forgotten about the events that had transpired the night I decided to use the deep web. It was a typical Sunday afternoon. I sat on my back porch drinking some cold sweet tea and listening to the hum of nature. Natural life can be so beautiful. Alone I sat, in a serene peace, seemingly impenetrable from the vile world that lay outside the boundaries of my own little haven. That was when I heard a crash and screaming coming from my house. Immediately I thought it was my sister-in-law watching TV too loud, which she had a tendency to do, but then I heard my wife sobbing uncontrollably. Panic sunk into my heart and I dashed into the house. I entered the large living room just in time to see a large masked man slit my wife's throat. I screamed at him, but he didn't even acknowledge my existence. I was screaming uncontrollably and ran toward him with intent to kill. I smashed a glass lamp over his head, but he didn't even flinch. I was questioning if he even felt it or not. He turned around and grabbed me by my throat. He lifted me up off the ground and brought my face close to his. "You thought I forgot about you, boy?" I instantly recognized him as the man from that deep web live stream I saw all those months ago. That was the last thing I remember before waking up. I awoke to see my sister-in-law's mangled corpse on the floor. It looked like she'd been cut in fucking half. To my horror, I saw my beloved wife's body there, drenched in blood. I sobbed uncontrollably for some time. I'm still not sure how much time passed while I knelt there and sobbed. Time may very well have stood still for all I knew or cared. But after I composed myself, I noticed something strange about my wife's corpse. Her stomach was not nearly as large as I had remembered it to be. I crawled over to analyze her body further. The wicked idea danced across my imagination. I pushed her on her side and my hunch turned out to be true. That sick bastard had cut my child out of my wife and had taken it. It was certainly far along enough to have been born at this point. What the fuck was I going to do? I called the police and the operator's apparent apathy toward the situation did nothing but anger me. 911, what's the emergency? The operator said in an uninterested tone. Someone killed my family, and I think they took my daughter. I frantically let out in a single breath. I continued to tell them my address. We'll have someone over there as soon as we can. The way she said that frustrated me. Here I am, sitting in a puddle of my family's blood. My life's been drastically changed forever, and she makes it seem as if it's just another day at the office. Where's the empathy? Where's the compassion for your fellow human being? After days of investigation and questioning, they were unable to find the killer or my daughter. I told those lazy fucking cops that this man found me and my family because I used the deep web. But because it was so long ago, and I couldn't find the website again, they couldn't do anything about it. They called it a random act of heinous violence, and within 2 weeks, the story did make the local news, but nothing more happened than that. I guess it wasn't shocking enough. The whole incident was forgotten and people were worried about the next terrible thing. How could I live with myself after this? My entire family was dead because I was snooping around something I had no business to be partaking in. The following weeks were the worst of my life. I would drink as soon as I got up, and then drink all day. Alcohol was the only escape from this fucked up reality I had to live with. I was a shell of a human, nothing more than a clusterfuck of negative, hideous emotions. Misery became my only companion, but I had no one to be miserable with. I had to live this horrible fate alone. Years had gone by when I looked into the mirror to see the unshaven face I'd come to despise. Every day I thought about where my daughter might be. Maybe they sent her away to live with a nice, loving family across the country. I half-heartedly deluded myself. Deep down, I knew she was most likely raised in some human trafficking ring where she'd be beaten, raped, or even worse, in some hellhole filled with those sick fucks. I slowly made my way to my porch when I saw a familiar vehicle pull into my driveway. I could barely remember who it belonged to. When I saw his face, I instantly recognized him. It was my father. I hadn't seen him in years. "Son, I know you're hurting, but this is no way to live your life. Do you think you can move on?" I looked up at him, grimacing. "Do you think I'd be here doing this if I could move on?" He gave me a rough look and said that I needed to get revenge. He placed a revolver on the table in front of me, gave me a stern nod, and left. I was honestly shocked. This was the most religious man I'd known in my life who argued against the killing of any kind. I didn't know if I could do it, but I started to think of how many people those bastards had done this to. I can't be the only one. So, if I were to theoretically go through with this, I'd really be doing the world a service. No, fuck that. I'm avenging my family, and I'm going to save my daughter. Over the next couple of days, I drained my bank account and purchased thousands of dollars in weaponry and ammunition. I quickly realized there was a lot of illegal stuff that would come in real handy. I turned back to the deep web to buy spying equipment, heavy weapons, and explosives. It took about a month to gather enough supplies for my suicide mission, and as I sat in my basement with thousands of rounds of ammunition, pounds of explosives, and almost $20,000 in spying equipment, I knew I was going to wreak havoc on these sons of bitches once and for all. Days went by, and I began to feel lethargic about the whole situation. I hadn't any idea of how I was going to find these people, or even if I could. It was like looking for a needle in a haystack. 2 weeks went by of endless hours on the deep web, looking for the bastard who'd taken my family away from me. I came across something that seemed almost familiar in a way. It was another live stream of people torturing a child. I felt a vile hatred rise up from the pit of my stomach. I knew this wasn't my guy, but I'd grown too impatient to wait any longer. If I can't find the needle in the haystack, I guess I'm just going to have to burn down the entire thing. I thought to myself with hatred oozing from my pores. I made use of some of the spying equipment I bought and was able to figure out where these bastards were broadcasting from. An evil grin stretched across my face when I figured out they were right here in my own state. I loaded my car with a machine gun, an AK-47, and C4. I started my drive. This may have been the longest 2 hours of my life. I was so excited to finally kill some of these sick, disgusting people. After almost taking a wrong turn, I found the rusty old barn house the torture porn was being broadcasted from. There were surprisingly only a few people there. A total of 4 men were running this operation. I watched for a while, but they never came out of the barn house. With my AK-47 in hand, I made my way to the entrance. I could see them raping a small boy, no older than 12. He was crying hysterically and covered in blood. They were completely oblivious to me. I aimed my rifle sight down. Admittedly, it took me a minute to actually pull the trigger. Pulling it was much harder than I would have thought, but seeing these sickos violate this defenseless child made me realize these people really were better off dead. I opened fire and screamed "fuck you" as loud as my lungs would permit. From what I could tell, at least 2 of them were dead. One was shot, but alive, and the 4th noticed quickly enough and got behind a truck. He had a pistol on him and fired back at me. This guy must have been legally blind or something because he missed pretty damn bad. Minutes went by and I slowly crept around to the other side of the building. The one with the gun was screaming at the other one to get up, but he was clearly unable. I got as close to the other gunman as I could in preparation to kill him. I aimed my sight, but I must have made a noise because he heard me. He spun around and shot. The bullet nearly grazed my skull. The gunshot was deafening. I ran toward him, expecting him to have had just fired his last shot. He had. I put a bullet through that motherfucker's head. I stood over his bloody corpse for a brief minute. I wanted to spit on it, but I didn't want to leave any evidence for the cops, so I resisted the urge. I walked over to the bloodied one I shot earlier. Laughing as I did, I placed my boot on his throat. He kept begging for his life, but there was a better chance of hell freezing over before I spared him. I made sure his last minutes on this earth were as miserable as possible. Glaring down at this sick man, I knew I was doing the right thing. I knew I was ridding the world of scum. Please, don't kill me. This wasn't my idea. He begged. What did you fucking say? You have the nerve to try and talk your way out of your inevitable death. How dare you? I pulled my leg back, and in one swift motion I kicked his skull in. His gray matter spilled all over the floor. The poor boy was sobbing uncontrollably. I pulled out my prepaid cell phone, dialed 911 and told them of the situation. I told the boy to forget this night and then turned to walk away. The ride home seemed to drag on for hours. I'd heard so many things about having PTSD after killing people. So many articles online said that after killing someone, you'd almost always feel guilty, even if you know you did the right thing. But the truth was, I didn't feel guilty at all. I felt powerful. More powerful than I'd ever felt in the years leading up to this day. I knew after I saw that babbling pile of shit beg for his life that I was going to kill again. It felt so right to have someone begging for their life, and knowing that you weren't going to grant them their wish made it all the more satisfying. My life continued like that for many months. I'd spent almost all my free time on the deep web trying to track down anything that could lead me to my daughter and killing anyone I deemed worthy to die. I was like an over-the-top vigilante or something. Jesus, those were the days. Eventually, I became more involved in the private sector and started accepting payments to kill people. I'd gained enough notoriety in the criminal world that almost anyone knew who I was. I just wish I could go back in time and tell myself how much more money I could make by simply killing people. It makes me realize what a waste of my life teaching those hopeless dipshits really was. I was making chump change compared to what I make now. People apparently pay good money to have someone killed. I'd already made just under $3 million in the past 6 months. And I didn't even have to repeat the same monotonous lecture 7 times in a day. I almost became apathetic about ever finding my daughter again. She was most likely dead, or even worse. She could be anywhere in the world, and the odds of ever finding her were next to none, I thought. One day a connection of mine told me he had a really good gig set up. He said that if I could kill 3 people well enough, I could become a regular for an underground overlord. For those of you that don't know, this was the kind of guy who had more money than God. He ran a lot of the underground operations and even had a strong affiliation with the Silk Road before it got shut down. I knew this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and I jumped at the chance. I went over the information. I immediately realized these were going to be the highest-profile people I would ever kill. When I first discovered I was going to have to kill a family with a young child, I was mortified. The only people I have had to kill up to this point has been other criminals and sadists. How was I going to bring myself to take the lives of a seemingly innocent family? I would never even know why exactly I was being hired to kill them. You can't ask questions like that to the higher-ups, though. Anyone who did was normally killed themselves, or at the very least ostracized by the organization they were trying to work for. It was a pretty serious business I got myself into. I had no problem with that. I only did what I was told, and nothing more. That was part of the reason I gained so much notoriety in my field. In fact, most people in this field never even get a chance to work for the Overlord. And if you're wondering why I keep referring to him as the Overlord, it is because he does not communicate with you directly. There are a lot of people looking for him, and he's responsible for billions in damage, and the loss of countless innocent lives, although they don't have a lot of information on him as of right now, and will probably never catch him. The next day, I was going to have to start tracking down this family I was ordered to kill. But that night, I was in a small bar in the middle of nowhere, downing alcohol like there was no tomorrow and contemplating how exactly I was going to bring myself to do this. I knew in the pit of my stomach that I wasn't a murderer. Well, let me rephrase that. Not a murderer of the innocent. I had no problem killing the evil men of the earth. I encountered so many sickos in my life. How could someone torture an animal or another person? I still couldn't bring myself to understand how anyone could do such a thing. Even if I found the man who kidnapped my daughter, I wouldn't torture him. I'd end his pathetic life and be done with him. Even after all the pain and agony that bastard put me through, I still knew I was better than him. I wouldn't become the monster that I sought to destroy. The bar began spinning after I downed my 5th shot, and I immediately came to regret this. I didn't feel threatened by the few others in the bar before, but once I lost control of myself, it seemed as if I became all that much more paranoid. I became so much more vulnerable to those around me. And I couldn't die just yet. I knew the events that were soon to come would be life-altering. I had this great feeling about this next job and the opportunities it would bring, which is quite unusual. I never feel intuitive like this. With hopes of surviving until tomorrow, I drunkenly made my way back to the motel I was staying in. The snow and ice outside made it much more difficult to get there. As sad as it is to say, I ended up falling 3 times before I got home and locked the door. It wasn't a far walk. But adding strong alcohol to any walk makes it seem like a journey around the entire globe. I laid down and the thought of becoming the most powerful criminal in the world rushed through my mind before I went to the realm of the unconscious. That night, I dreamt that I was a hero destined to save the world. The next morning, my ears were assaulted by the alarm I'd set on my phone. I downed a couple aspirins to cope with the headache and got to work. The family I was going to be attacking lived in a relatively populated area, and I knew if I was going to pull this off, it would have to be quiet. I sharpened 3 separate knives and placed them in my coat pocket. The idea of bringing one of those blades across the neck of a little girl rushed through my mind and made me sick. But I knew that sacrifices were going to have to be made. I knew I had to be bad for the greater good. Unfortunately, I'll never even know why I'm killing this family, but I did my best to separate myself from the idea that these were good people. They had to have done something pretty bad to have powerful criminals hiring hitmen to kill them, right? I drove my SUV to their neighborhood and parked down the street at 3 o'clock. Looking toward their backyard, I could see the father, Ronnie Williams, on the back porch. I knew I was going to have to kill him within the next half hour because the mother, Bridget Williams, would be picking up their daughter from school and would arrive home at 3:30 every day. I thought to myself how easy this job was to do since someone else had done the monotonous task of stalking these people and recording their schedule. I locked my vehicle and started walking toward the house. I knew where they kept their extra key in the front yard garden and made my way into the house from the front. I waited for Ronnie to come back into the house for 10 minutes before I started to become impatient. I was going to need time to hide the body, I thought, and knew I needed to do this fast before Bridget and her daughter got home. I decided to push something over in the kitchen and hid behind the refrigerator as Mr. Williams slowly crept into the house saying hello. I realized how truly inept this guy was by this. I waited until he came close enough and I reached over to slice his throat open. He screamed, much to my dismay. I tackled him and plunged the knife into his neck violently, nearly cutting his fucking head off. Watching the blood drip onto the floor drained me in some way. I sat over the lifeless body of a man who never saw me coming. I collected myself and dragged his body to the basement. My goal was to leave no evidence for the police to find. Making my way up the stairs, I heard the front door opening. I remembered the blood all over the kitchen floor. Shit, I said to myself. I heard the woman and her daughter started screaming at the sight of the gruesome murder. I quickly rushed upstairs. "Ma'am, I need you and your daughter to remain calm. I'm part of the FBI. I'm afraid a murderer has made his way into your house earlier this day," I said. "I want to see some identification," the woman abruptly demanded. I pulled out my fake badge I always carried around and showed it to them. Anyone who knew anything about federal badges would easily detect it was a fake, but most people don't. "Is my husband all right?" she asked me. I told her he was downstairs. She slowly made her way down the basement stairs, and I followed closely behind. When she located her husband, she fell to her knees and began sobbing. That was when I pulled out my knife and slit her throat from behind. She was dead within seconds. Now for the hard part, I thought to myself. I made my way back upstairs to find the little girl. She was nowhere in sight. I frantically looked all over the house, but she was nowhere to be found. I grew increasingly worried. I knew I was being watched by the Overlord, and if he saw this clear display of incompetence, it would hurt any chances I had of working for him. I began walking up the creaky wooden stairs to continue my search. I knew I heard a sound coming from behind the door. I slowly and quietly made my way toward it. I wrapped my hand around the shiny doorknob and began to turn. A large German Shepherd dog jumped on me, biting my arm. This caught me by surprise. I'd been wondering where that damn dog was. I struggled with the beast on top of me for a few minutes, but it was not long that I had my blade through its skin, and its blood soaking the cold wooden floor. After composing myself, I continued my search for the girl. This girl is barely 6 years old. I thought, where could she have gone? There were enough rooms in this house that this could take a while. But I knew the longer I was here, the worse it was for me. I checked each room in the house thoroughly, but found nothing. That was when I remembered the girl's father had built a fort in the backyard for her. That has to be where she is. I began outside and exited the back door to the porch. I saw that the small makeshift door on the fort was closed and knew I'd find her in there. I walked over and opened the door to the fort. She screamed as I forcefully pulled her out of the fort. All her energy was spent trying to free herself. I tried calming her down, but to no avail. She was crying and sobbing uncontrollably. I brought her back inside to finish the job. I threw her to the floor as I mentally readied myself to drive my knife through the little girl's heart. I could feel my own moral compass screaming at me to stop this madness. It was hard enough to kill the parents. How was I going to kill their daughter now too? I closed my eyes and brought my knife close to her chest. She was screaming, but I did my best to distance myself from the whole situation as much as I could. I closed my eyes and began to focus. The screaming stopped and I opened my eyes to see the lifeless corpse of the little girl oozing blood onto the floor. I started sobbing as the realization of my actions washed over me like a tidal wave of guilt and regret. I had to do it. I had to do it. I kept telling myself. Yes, you did. A strange voice exclaimed behind me. It sounded really familiar, but I had no idea where I heard it before. I turned around to see a large masked man standing behind me. He began to speak. I know this whole ordeal has been difficult for you, killing your own daughter and such. But What did you fucking say? This was my daughter, but my daughter has been dead for years. I said, cutting him off. What do you think I did when I kidnapped her from you, Johnny boy? I stole her from you and gave her to a loving couple incapable of having a child of their own. And honestly, they did a much better job of raising her than you ever could have. He calmly stated. Why would you do this to me? Because I can. And if you even think of attacking me, a bullet will be through your head so fast your fucking head will spin. I didn't know what to do. I fell to my knees and began sobbing. Why did I let this happen? Why, God? Fucking why? What the fuck was the point of any of this? I thought there was something strange about her. How could I have been so stupid? People always say when you look into the abyss looks back. As I stood there over the corpse of my dead daughter, looking into the eyes of the man who'd led me down the road to hell, I knew I was no longer looking down toward a monster. I was looking at an equal. The amount of self-loathing and hatred that lurked in my soul left me devoid of any other feelings. I knew that I was even more despicable than the monster that dragged me down here, for he at least knew he was doing wrong. I have been nothing but a vigilante masquerading as a hero. I'm no hero. I never was. It's ironic in a way. I became the very thing I set out to destroy. I looked up at the Overlord and said, "Did I pass the test?" He looked pleased with my response and nodded his head. He extended his arm to help me up. After getting back up, I lunged at him and managed to place a knife directly into his throat. As I did, a bullet flew by. It was so close that I felt the air from the bullet on my skin. I was so lucky to have made it out of there alive. I still don't know how I even managed it at all, though. After achieving that small piece of justice that I'd been waiting for, everything else was a blur. I wrote this as soon as I got home. Thinking back on the whole thing, it seems surreal. What a terrible time it has been this last little while. I don't think I want to continue very much longer though. I miss my family. I miss my unborn daughter. When I'm done writing this, I think I might just join them. My local internet cafe is not much of a sight to behold. I think that's what may have contributed to it shutting down for a couple months back in June. The exterior was reminiscent of an abandoned shack with its dilapidated appearance and broken windows. However, after they cleaned up the inside, I definitely saw some improvement. Sparkly clean tile floors and beautiful mahogany countertops filled the cafe with a sense of ease and elegance. I always got plenty of work done in there, so the shop's grungy look never bothered me much, but it was nice to have a change of scenery once the cleanup was done. I was probably the only regular at the cafe, venturing in on almost a daily basis. Plenty of other folks cycled in and out, but nary a familiar face would show up. This was fine, since I only went there to edit my vlogs and website on occasion. Striking up a conversation with someone recognizable was not on the agenda, ever. I was there for some much-needed peace and quiet, not small talk. Though I had Wi-Fi at home, the thin walls there did little to muffle my father's drunken ramblings. The cafe was my escape from the unwanted noise. I strolled in on a Saturday morning, just 5 days after the grand reopening. I was feeling pretty groggy, still recovering from a cold I caught during the week. The humid August air didn't help matters. Because of this, I decided to grab a coffee before getting my things set up. I walked across the glimmering, newly replaced floors and heard them squeak under my sneakers. I laughed a little to myself, almost tempted to start turning in place just to hear the sound a few more times. No, I told myself, grow up. I ordered my coffee and took a look around the room while I waited for it. I took a mental note of how many faces were in the cafe with me. I was surely going to grab a quiet little table in the corner, away from these strangers. Small iced regular? The barista held out my coffee and straw. Thanks, I said plainly. I threw down a couple of quarters as a tip and strolled on over to the table I wanted. I spent the next few hours clipping and splicing my videos from the days previous. I was doing a week-long series about the gym I go to. Basically workout tips and some comedy bits with my buddy Jake who works the front desk. I found myself laughing out loud over a protein shake skit we had done. I may have drawn some attention to my little corner of the room. Though the staring eventually subsided, I felt it best for me to leave, as I had been in there much longer than usual. I reached down and unplugged my laptop charger, and that's when my hand brushed up against something. Confused, I took a look under my table to investigate. A 16-inch black bag sat just beyond where my feet were settled. It had pockets and a shoulder strap, as well as an abundance of dust coating the leather. Holy crap, I thought to myself. Someone must have left their laptop behind or something. At first, I was going to do the right thing. I very easily could have handed it to a barista and called it a day. I guess, maybe that would have been the smart thing to do. However, a mixture of curiosity and stupidity came over me, keeping me from being honest. Instead, after packing up my own things, I swung the mystery bag over my shoulder and swiftly exited the cafe. Stupid. I pulled into my driveway at about noon, the hot summer sun beaming down on my front lawn. My father was doing his usual, half-assed inspection of the plants in the garden, beer can in hand. I tried to get into the house without a word to him, but he stopped me just as I opened the storm door. Hey, "Why are you in such a hurry?" he asked, taking a swig of his drink. "Dad, I don't have time. Important website business." Well, he slurred, "Don't stop on my account." "But you just stopped me," I thought to myself. I pushed through the front door, passing my sleeping mother on the couch, and darted upstairs to my room. Slam. I shut my door hard behind me and locked it immediately. I tossed my belongings and newly found goods onto my bed and kicked my shoes clear across the room. I was excited to dig into this lucky haul. Carefully and slowly, I unzipped the top of the bag and pulled it open. I gasped a little to myself. Despite the appearance of the bag, the contents were no joke. A shiny, brand-new-looking laptop was nestled nicely inside. I pulled it out and observed it with awe. It was certainly nicer than my basic 500 gig HP from a big box store. I couldn't believe what I was holding. I flipped it open and began feeling the keys and monitor. It was in mint condition. I had to be the luckiest guy in the world. Everything was there, including a charger and wireless mouse. I even found a bag of screen wipes at the bottom. I also dug into the pockets, curious as to what treasure I might find in there. What I found was a cell phone. Nothing special, just some cheap Android phone. It was still powered on and had no screen lock on it. Exploring it further, I noticed there were no texts and only one recent call to an out-of-state number. Being into electronics, I went into the settings to see what kind of operating system it had. It was vastly out of date on software, still set in some variation of the Lollipop OS. That's alright, I thought. I could still flip it for a quick $10 or so. I placed it on the bed next to the laptop and sat for a moment, trying to take in what I had in front of me. This was such a great find, but I needed to power on the laptop and figure out what I was working with. To my excitement, there was no lock-in screen. I was in, immediately after booting it up. I was never as into laptops as I was phones, but I could tell right away I was not working with your standard, stock operating system. This thing resembled more of a modded setup that I had seen kids working with back in high school, but I couldn't name it off the top of my head. Luckily, it was simple enough to navigate. I set it up with my Wi-Fi and dived right into the file storage to get some idea of whose computer I had. I was disappointed for just a few moments, but after clicking around a bit, I did find a folder labeled A. Inside was one JPG, titled 1 by 1. Intrigued, my stomach did a little flip as I opened the image. I was puzzled by what I found. It was a screenshot from a website. It looked like a post in some forum, from a user named Anon4 with nothing but phone numbers listed and 0 replies. Underneath the list was the tagline, "You know who you are." Scanning the image for answers, I noticed the address bar for the site. It seemed to be a nonsense string of characters followed by a .onion extension. Onion? Wasn't that a parody news site or something? I wasn't too sure, but I decided to dig a little deeper. I clicked on the X at the top, taking me back to the desktop. That's when I noticed another folder. This one was labeled pics, which stirred up some more thrills in my bones. Yes. I cheered to myself. This would more than likely reveal the owner's identity. I became disappointed as I clicked through the pictures. There was no human life, just shots of different places and scenery. This included a dark image of a barber shop, a path in the woods somewhere, and even someone's garage. What really caught my eye was the last pic. It was the cafe. My stomach started doing acrobatics now, my heart racing. Why were there random pictures in this thing? Why was there a screenshot of a message board with a list of phone numbers? The files just weren't adding up for me, but I hatched a half-baked plan. I didn't know if it was going to end the mystery, but I couldn't help but pry. I pulled up the pic with the phone numbers, grabbed the Android phone, and dialed the first number at the top of the list. After only 2 rings, I was greeted with silence. Strange, I thought, but I pressed on. I dialed the next number on the list. This time, it rang 5 times before I got a generic inbox greeting with the phone number listed. Interesting, but I hung up before I heard the beep. I grew bored of dialing the random numbers. I decided to take a break and put the laptop and cell phone away for a little while. I knew I'd come back to it later. Once the evening rolled around, I waited for my parents to go to bed and then fixed myself up a snack. This was pretty much a nightly routine of mine. I clicked on the TV as I usually did and settled on the first news channel I scrolled to. This is when things took a turn for the weird. A breaking news story was displayed on screen, one from the next town over. Young barber, age 25, found murdered at work. Damn, I shook my head. That sucks. A female news reporter was on the scene, outside of the barber shop where it took place. Wait a second. I couldn't believe my eyes. That barber shop. It was the same one from the pic on the laptop. I was sure of it. I put my plate down on the coffee table and raced upstairs to grab the computer. I booted it up, clicked on the folder of pictures, and then the photo in question. I ran back downstairs with the laptop in hand and held it up to the TV screen. Yes, it was definitely the same barber shop. Wow, what were the chances of that? I was shaking my head in amazement. I finished watching the news story and began feeling tired. I was about ready for bed, so I grabbed the remote. The news story just after grabbed my attention before I could hit the power button. Cold murder in local forest. This one was also nearby, just over the bridge in the opposite direction. This world is terrible, I thought. I hadn't seen 2 stories like that back to back in a long time. That's when it hit me. I scrolled over to the picture of the woods in the same folder. Then, I waited to see if the news story included the location of the homicide on video. Though I didn't get anything solid to compare it to, I was definitely getting weird vibes. First a barber shop, and now a forest. I had to be grasping at straws, though, right? I decided it was bedtime. I had a pretty restless night of sleep, tossing and turning and kicking my covers to the foot of my bed. It was hot and humid and I kept waking up with the sweats. Needless to say, I was in dire need of coffee the next morning. I was probably smart to leave the strange laptop at home, grabbing my own equipment as I headed out the door. I drove rather quickly to the cafe, eyelids still heavy. I got my regular coffee and sat down at my favorite booth in the corner. Only one other person resided in the building, apart from the baristas at work. It was nice and quiet, and felt peaceful. A good contrast from my evening snack and sweaty night of interrupted rest. Still, my mind couldn't help but wonder. The web address from the screenshot I found came rolling into the forefront of my thoughts. What was that onion domain all about? Why did the web address make no sense? It was something like code influx with random numbers and symbols after it. This was meaningless to me. I decided to do some research. I couldn't recall the exact website, but I remembered the .onion extension, so I started from there. I was immediately blown away. Apparently, what it pertains to is web addresses not reachable on normal servers. It takes you through something called Tor and is used for some pretty shady activity. I guess it involves what's called the dark web. I'd heard a little about this before. I was beginning to feel sick. The websites listed on the wiki were pretty revolting to say the least. Nothing I would ever want to be involved in. The worst part? I was beginning to think the laptop I found was used solely to access this part of the internet. I couldn't bear the thought of being in possession of it any longer. I had to do something. I stormed out of the cafe ready to spring into action when I was stopped by a tap on my leg. I looked down to see a homeless-looking man in a black tattered leather jacket sitting up against the front of the building. His face looked rough, complete with a badly shaven beard and cracked lips. He looked miserable. He held out a small plastic cup, looking up at me with desperation in his eyes. "Spare change, sir?" "I'm in a hurry, dude, and I don't carry cash." "Please." He begged some more. He reached out and grabbed my pants leg. "No, get away from me." I kicked his hand away. The guy looked upset. His eyes were actually watering a little bit. I felt a little bad, but damn, don't grab me. That's when the guy did the strangest thing. He took out a phone and started taking pictures of me. "What are you doing now?" I asked, confused as all hell. He didn't answer. All I could do about it was run to my car and leave as fast as possible. What was that guy's deal? I called my friend Peter on my way home. I knew he would have some more insight on this whole thing. I was hoping I could bring him to my house and have him wipe the computer clean. Then I could sell it to a random Yahoo and be done with this whole misadventure. Once I picked up my friend, I sped back to my house and showed him what I found in the cafe. He was blown away. "This thing is lethal," he laughed. "It looks pretty customized, honestly." "Yeah, I noticed that, but take a look at these." I clicked through the photos, showing him the ones that I compared with the news stories. "So, you think this laptop has some sort of connection to the murders?" "I don't know, man, but I think there's something fishy going on." He shrugged and took over the mouse for a moment. "Where's the picture of the phone numbers?" "It's somewhere in the file storage." "Yep, click there and bingo." Peter stared intently at the list and address bar in the screenshot. He also checked the file description and saw that the screenshot originated from the laptop, so it was taken from within the device. My hairs were at attention, all up and down my skin. "So, you tested these numbers out?" "Yeah, with this phone." I handed him the cell phone that came in the bag with the laptop and he scanned through it rapidly. Definitely a track phone, something bought as a burner. Possibly for some sort of business task? "Shall we try another phone number?" I nodded and pointed to one just below the phone numbers I tested out. He dialed it in and threw it on speakerphone so we could both listen in. It rang, and rang, and rang. It didn't stop ringing, so we hung up after the 8th ring. Peter looked at the phone funny, and then up at me. "I honestly don't know what's up with all this. Did you want me to just factory reset everything?" "Yeah, I mean, is that gonna take care of my problem?" "Not sure. But I think I'd like have some fun with this before we call it a day." I gave him a look, a glance of disagreement. I didn't think that would be in our best interest. "I don't think we should be messing with this, dude. Come on, what could go wrong? You could even film it. This could go viral." "Well, I'm not going to vlog me hanging around with a stolen laptop. Just do what you gotta do with it and let's move on." Peter smirked, looked at the screen again, and then dialed another phone number from the list. Again, we got nothing. This time, just another generic voicemail box greeting. He continued on to the next phone number, and halfway through dialing, he stopped. His eyes were scanning the screen. His face was now white as a ghost. What? Why did you stop? You okay? This is my phone number. My heart punched like a club to a gong. That can't be. I scooted over next to Peter and observed the screen. He was right. Just to be sure, he finished dialing and hit send. He put the phone up to his ear and waited. Just as he suspected, his pocket lit up and his ringtone sang away. We both looked at each other in shock. Dude. My hands were shaking, and my mouth was agape so far, I think my jaw was brushing my bed sheets. How? Is all Peter could muster up from his racing thoughts. This is unreal. I don't like this at all. Just wipe the hard drive and let's be done with it. Wait. He shouted, while looking at the screen again. My heart sank some more. I had a feeling about what he was about to say. What? Don't tell me. He didn't say a word. All he did was start frantically dialing another number. That's when I felt it. My pocket was now vibrating. I gulped so loud that I flinched. I reached down and pulled out my phone and answered. I held it up to my ear. Peter. I said through the receiver, looking at my visibly shaken friend across from me. This is messed up. He responded through the burner phone. I ended up driving Peter home shortly after. He had handed the phone over and told me he wanted to leave and take everything in. He left the laptop with me and told me he'd rather not mess with it. We decided to meet up at the cafe and drop it back off right in the morning. We'd wake up early and hopefully be the first ones in. However, I missed my alarm. Apparently, I also missed 10 calls from Peter. I opened up my messages and noticed the 4 texts he'd sent. Damn, I had to get going and fast. I had already packed up everything the night before, so all I had to do really was throw on a t-shirt and shorts and head to the cafe. As I turned the corner to where the cafe was, I had to hit the brakes pretty quickly. What I saw on that road was nothing but cops and ambulances. There were roadblocks set up on either side of the ambulances, and the cafe was barricaded. What in the... I was thinking out loud. This was crazy. There were people with their hands on their faces, looking scared and sad. I pulled over into the grocery store parking lot across the street and then walked over to the scene to get a closer look. I assumed Peter was doing the same thing. I ended up in a crowd of onlookers next door, looking at the scene before us. There was blood splatter on the front doors of the cafe and some papers, among other belongings, strewn all about. More blood covered the ground. Jesus, this was a damned massacre. I could hear the people beside me whispering to each other about what was going on. They're talking about a possible serial killer, one woman said to her friend. The kid was about to walk in, and suddenly bullets came in from over there. Nobody saw who fired the shots. A guy filled his wife in about what he witnessed. I was too curious to just be craning my neck from back there. I needed a closer look. I peered over at the cops who were busy questioning a barista by the ambulances. I crept past the barricade carefully. I slipped past a couple of other baristas and made my way to a second ambulance by the other barricade. The stretcher was in view now, but I couldn't tell who was in it. I decided to kneel down beside the ambulance and hopefully catch some conversation between the EMTs. I took out my phone and started recording. We lost him. He wasn't hanging in there much when we got here, but I was hoping. Jan, it's not your fault. You saved the girl. You can't save them all, you know? I wish I could. I heard him talk before he let go, you know. He told me his name was Peter. My hand jumped up over my mouth as I let out the weirdest sound. It was a gasp, combined with a grunt of disbelief. No, it couldn't be. Yeah, the other EMT said. We have his information already. Guess he was an IT guy for a local business. Smart kid, early 20s. I stumbled back a bit on my heels, dropping my phone in the process. I bumped into something solid behind me and stood up quickly. I turned around and saw that same homeless guy from the other day. My face was still contorted from the information I just received from my eavesdropping. The guy was just staring at me, stoic. He didn't even react to me bumping into him. He was glaring at me from behind an unchanging expression. I couldn't help it. I booked it across the street to my car. I could feel tears forming in my ducts, eyes twitching in the wind from my open driver's side window. Why did I have to wake up so late? Maybe Peter would have been spared from whatever this was. A drive-by? An assassination of some kind? My head was dizzy, my heart was hurting, but I was beginning to make some connection. The pictures on the computer, the phone numbers, the murders. Everything. I was getting an idea as to what it was I was dealing with. The stuff about the dark web, the strange laptop, and the phone numbers. I arrived home, heartsick as all hell. My friend was murdered today, and I couldn't stop it. Maybe if I had never grabbed the computer from the cafe, he'd still be alive. Maybe if I hadn't been so stupid, I could have handled this whole thing differently, and he wouldn't be dead right now. To top it off, I realized I left my phone at the bloody scene. I groaned and threw my head back in the driver's seat. Now what? Well, the phone is near some cops and the EMTs. Maybe if I call, they'll believe I dropped it before they got there and I won't get in trouble. I reached back and grabbed the burner phone out of the bag and started to dial my phone number when I suddenly had a thought. If the phone numbers we dialed somehow had something to do with the murders, that must mean. I grabbed the laptop out of the bag, my heart racing and body profusely sweating in fear. This whole thing was unreal. The fact that I was right in the middle of it was even worse. I clicked onto the folder of pictures of scenery from earlier. Again, my eyes scrolled across the picture of the barber shop. Then the forest. Finally, my eyes got to the picture of the cafe. Yes, the phone numbers in these locations have to somehow be tied together, but I didn't know how. Why was this happening? I was about to leave the folder, but then a small thumbnail at the end of the list of pictures caught my eye. I hovered the cursor over it and opened it up. With some cloud surface, the image was revealed. My jaw dropped in utter horror. A picture of my house. I was looking at a picture of my front yard and home. I hadn't noticed this before. Why hadn't I noticed this? Over in the top corner was a link, one that opened up the full cloud folder from some email made up of more gibberish characters. This folder contained more pics. Pics that were very different from the others. No way! I shouted out loud, face contorted in anger and fear all at once. Pictures of me. Pictures of me looking directly at the camera, others of my car. The last ones were of me sneaking into the crime scene at the cafe. That guy. That homeless-looking guy from the other day, and behind the ambulance. I have his laptop. He was watching me. How did he tie into these murders? My silent tirade was interrupted by the sudden sound of a jingle to my right. The phone was ringing in my passenger seat. I picked it up and peered at the phone number. I couldn't handle this anymore. I just couldn't take it. It was my own phone number. Grudgingly, I decided to swipe and answer the call. Who is this? I stammered. A gravelly voice answered from the other end. Spare change, sir? My best friend David and I were really into violence and gore. We watched all the bloodiest and most insane movies we could possibly find. In our desperate search to find more extremely violent movies, we started running out of things to watch. The quality in movies we were forced to watch continued to get worse and worse until they could no longer satisfy our need to see over-the-top action and death. That is until David came up with what he thought was a genius idea. Everything we were watching was fake. What better way to satisfy our need to see violence than to see the real thing? David had heard about a thing called the dark web from his brother, where we could find videos of people being brutalized in various different ways. No more terrible special effects and no more red food coloring. He told me that he'd talk to his brother, find out how to access it, and be at my house the next day to get started. He ran home in search of his brother, and I spent my day watching awful horror movies on Netflix. The next day I woke up to my cell phone ringing. Dude, I'm outside. Get up. It was spring break and my mother was out of town on business, so I had the house all to myself. I got out of bed, put some clothes on, and headed for the door to let David in. Before I could even get the door open completely, David shoved his way inside with a huge grin on his face. I know how to do it, man. I know how to get on the dark web. I watched some stuff last night and it was nuts, bro, exactly what we're looking for. David said, his grin getting whiter by the second. Sounds good, man. Let's get started, I said, wiping the crust from my eyes and following David as he led the way back to my room. He sat down at my computer and immediately pulled up a web page that was prompting him to install something. This stuff isn't going to fry my computer, is it? No, my brother said he uses it all the time. It'll be fine. Totally safe, David said, not taking his eyes off the screen. He explained to me that his brother met some people on the dark web that provided him with a link to a site with exactly the kind of stuff we'd be interested in seeing. He had folded up sheet of paper from his pocket with the .onion address scribbled on it. He typed it into the Tor browser that he had just downloaded, and what looked like an empty black screen showed up. I thought he might have typed the link incorrectly, but he started to move the cursor around the page slowly until he discovered a little blue hyperlink that read, "Enter at your own risk." David clicked on the link and the site took a minute to load up. When the web page finally opened, the background was black and all the words were in red. In big letters at the top of the page it said "Mercy Kill." Dismembered arms and legs that had blood dripping from each of them formed together to create the letters. Underneath the title of the website was a horizontal bar of categories to choose from: torture, porn, kidnapping, animals, and the list went on. There was also a submit button, which I assumed was how people uploaded their videos onto the website. After looking over the categories for a bit, we found one that we thought would have what we were looking for. We clicked on murder. Once again, the page took quite a while to load. When it did, there were 3 black boxes, one after the other, with titles under each of them. There were play buttons hovering in the middle of each box. The title of the first video was "This Little Piggy Went Home," followed by "Take Me Out to the Ball Game" and "Russian Roulette with a Twist." The videos had no preview screen or thumbnail, so we had no idea what we were in for before clicking play. David decided to click on Russian Roulette first. It seemed like the safest bet since we knew what Russian Roulette is. The video buffered for a moment and then began. In this video there was a man sitting in a chair. The room had white tile floor and a white sheet hung behind the man. There was a white table in front of him with 6 handguns laid out on top of it. The man was wearing only boxer briefs and was covered in sweat. He had one hand tied to the chair, but the other was free. He looked young, but was definitely older than us, and he was very skinny, like he hadn't eaten in weeks. We saw the man's mouth move, but there was no sound. David quickly turned my computer's speakers on, and we could hear a man speaking. A game. There are 6 guns on the table. One of them has a bullet in it. The rest of them do not. Pick one, put it in your mouth and pull the trigger. Choose correctly and I'll let you go. A voice said from behind the camera. The man in the chair reached out with his shaky free hand and grabbed the gun in the middle of the table. He brought the gun up to his face, stared down the barrel, then closed his eyes. He whispered something inaudible to himself, put the gun in his mouth and pulled the trigger. The sound that emitted from my speakers almost made my heart leap out of my chest. The sheet behind the man was sprayed with blood and brain matter. His head whipped back and then forward, quickly slamming into the table with a loud bang. Soon the white tabletop had run red with blood. From behind the camera we could hear the other man chuckling to himself, escalating slowly into a loud maniacal laugh. He finally walked out in front of the camera. He had his back turned to the camera and walked over to the table and began removing the clips from each of the remaining handguns. He gathered them all in his hands and brought them up close for the camera. The man was bald and had a plain white face mask on. He showed us the tops of the clips, and there was a bullet loaded every one of them. I lied, he yelled before returning to his loud villainous laughter. The man in the mask walked back over to the body and ran his hand through the dead man's hair slowly. He then placed his finger inside the hole the bullet had left in the back of the man's head with a disgusting squishing noise. That was the end of the video. Although I was a little shocked by the gruesomeness of the video, it was exactly what we were looking for. I felt sympathy for the people being killed in these videos, but I just tried to convince myself that these were just very high-quality films. We continued on to watch the other 2 videos. This little piggy went home consisted of a woman strapped to a metal table, getting each of her toes cut off with pliers one by one and having them fed to her by an obese naked man while her mouth was held open by a dental mouth opener. Take Me Out to the Ball Game was a video of a man in a baseball uniform who was bound to a wooden chair. He looked like he had already been severely beaten. There were 2 men, each with a baseball bat in hand, standing in front of him in what looked like some sort of shed. "You like touching little boys, huh?" one of the men yelled at the tied-up man. The man in the uniform began to say something when one of the other men brought a baseball bat down with incredible force onto the man's crotch. The uniformed man began crying out in unspeakable pain as the other 2 men continued to hit him with ferocious swings in the kneecaps and stomach. Finally, when the man was beaten to the point of near unconsciousness, they decided to put him out of his misery. They both hit him 1 time each as hard as they could on the head. I could hear the crushing blows connect with his skull. They then poured gasoline all over the man, sparked a match and torched him. They threw both bats into the fire and the video came to end. After watching those 3 videos we were entertained. David began to scroll down to bring in the next 3 when a small ad appeared in the bottom right corner of the screen. Would you like to subscribe for exclusive daily videos for free? Read the out-of-place looking ad. There were 2 buttons that showed up when David brought the cursor over the ad. Yes/no. Before I could say anything, David had already selected yes. Another window loaded up and it had 2 blank bars to enter a home address and email address. David began to type my email address when I spun him around in the chair to face me. "What the hell are you doing? Are you crazy?" I said. "Come on, man. Exclusive videos? That sounds sick, David said with the same stupid grin he had on his face when he walked in earlier. If you want to sign up, use your email and address. I don't want my info posted somewhere on the dark web. Whatever, man, David said, closing out of the window. Just when we were about to continue watching more videos, there was a knock at the door. David seemed to pay it no mind and continued scrolling through the web page. I got up and headed to the front door. When I opened the door, it was David's mother, looking a bit frustrated. "Hey Anthony, is David here?" she said with a smile, even though I could tell that she was upset with David about something. I figured she might have found out from his brother that he was messing around on the dark web. "Yeah, I'll go get him for you," I said, gesturing her to come in and heading back towards my room. I opened the door and once again he didn't seem to notice me. When I put my hand on his shoulder, he got startled and jumped. "Hey man, your mom is here and she doesn't seem happy," I said as David spun around his chair. "Damn snitch," David said under his breath, confirming my suspicions. "Well, I'll see you later." We did our handshake and I walked him out. His mother had gone back outside to wait for him in the car. I waved goodbye to them and off they went. When I got back to my room, I saw that David had closed out everything on my computer and I hadn't watched him closely enough to know how to open it back up myself. I decided to grab a bowl of cereal and hang out watching YouTube for the rest of the day. About 2 hours after David left my house, I received a new email notification on my phone. I selected the app and I saw that the email had nothing in the subject line and was sent from an encrypted email address. Upon opening the email, I was greeted with bold red letters that said, "Congratulations. Thank you for subscribing to our daily exclusive videos. You will be sent an exclusive video from one of our users every day. You are free to unsubscribe at any time. Estimated delivery tomorrow by 6 p.m. Damn it," I said out loud to myself. David had signed me up while I was out of the room. Now my email and address could be floating around anywhere on the dark web for anybody to see. What the hell was going to be delivered tomorrow? I thought it was just videos. Why can't they email them to me? I texted David, calling him an asshole for doing something so stupid without my permission, but I didn't receive a response. Eventually I got over it and continued my day as usual. I stayed up late playing video games with a couple of my other friends and eventually headed to bed. The next day I woke up around 3 p.m. I texted David to see if he wanted to come over and watch some more videos. I was hoping he would say yes so that he could teach me how to access the web page on my own, but again he didn't answer. I figured his mother took his phone away to punish him. My mother had left a list of things for me to do around the house, and one of them was to check the mail every day. I walked outside to the end of the driveway and took a quick look around when I saw an ambulance and 2 cop cars parked in front of a house a few doors down. I could see some yellow caution tape, but everything beyond it was blocked by a car. I didn't know who lived in that house, but I hoped everything was all right. I pulled open the mailbox and inside there was a single black envelope with the letters MK stamped in red on the top right corner. I had forgotten completely that I was expecting a delivery from the website today. I went back inside and tore open the envelope, which contained a small USB drive. I took the USB to my room and debated whether it was worth the risk to plug it into my computer or not. After a few seconds of thinking, I decided to plug it in. When I did, a folder opened up on my computer with an MP4 file inside named Honey, I'm Home. I double-clicked the file and my media player began playing the video. The video was dark and fuzzy with no sound. I could see a faint light slowly start illuminating the video, which I soon realized was a car's headlights. Once the headlights got closer, I noticed that I was looking at a driveway to a home. I could see the corner of a garage door at the bottom right of the video. The camera was hung above the garage and was angled down in order to see anyone who could be approaching the house. The headlights continued to get brighter and brighter until the car pulled into the driveway. It was a large black Cadillac SUV. It parked and the headlights shut off, making the video look much darker, but I could still see well enough. The door to the SUV popped open and a man wearing a suit got out of the vehicle. I could barely see his face, but I could tell that he was a middle-aged man who obviously had a good-paying job. He closed the driver's side door and opened the back door. As he reached in the back seat, presumably to grab something, a large man crept into frame. He was dressed in all black and had a hoodie on that covered the majority of his face from the camera. He had his hands in the pocket of his sweater and walked up behind the man who was still digging in the back seat of his car. The hooded man grabbed the businessman by the shoulder and spun him around to face him. The man in the suit put his hands up in submission, but the hooded figure pulled a large knife from his pocket and plunged it into the man's stomach multiple times. He pulled the knife up through the man's body and the suit jacket he had unopened up. Even through the semi-blurry video I could see the white undershirt the man had on turn almost completely red. The businessman fell to his hands and knees next to the vehicle. The hooded man then grabbed him by the neck, leaned his head up against the vehicle and proceeded to slam the car door into his head multiple times until his head was a flattened bloody mess. Again, I was entertained by the video. It was actually easier to detach myself from this poor guy because the camera quality was not very good and I couldn't see the expressions on his face. I texted David to let him know that the exclusive video had come in. No response. I pulled the USB out of my computer and set it on my desk. I made myself a microwave dinner and turned on the TV. I almost never watch TV, and the last thing my mom watched before she left was the news, so that's what came on. The banner below the news anchor read, "Men brutally murdered in front of home in name of my community." I remembered the cop cars and ambulance that I had seen earlier and knew that must have been where the killing happened. It wasn't until the news anchor went into detail that I came to a terrifying realization. A man was found dead in his driveway late last night with multiple stab wounds and massive blunt force trauma to the head. The man's identity has been confirmed by his wife to be, name redacted, father of 2 and loving husband. If you have any information that will help in the ongoing investigation, please call our tip line at phone number redacted. The anchor stated. I immediately sprung up from the couch and ran to my room to find the USB drive. I grabbed it and plugged it into my computer as fast as possible, my hands shaking. I double-clicked on the folder where the video had once been and it was gone. I thought maybe I had deleted or moved it by accident. I searched every folder on my computer. It was nowhere to be found. I panicked and scrambled to find the envelope that the USB had come in. Luckily, it was still close to the top of my trash bin. I pulled it from the bin and examined it for the second time. I hadn't noticed when I first saw it. The envelope had no stamp. It wasn't mailed, it was hand-delivered. I picked up my cell phone to call the police, but I hesitated. What if the police thought it was me? Even if they didn't, could I get arrested for going on the dark web? After all, it was most likely my fault that this man was murdered because of this stupid subscription. Before I could make a final decision, it seemed like one was made for me. My phone vibrated in my hand with a new email notification. I clicked on the notification and the email filled my screen. In big bold letters, the email said, "Do not go to the police. Your subscription has been canceled." I scrolled down a bit and noticed that there was an attachment with the email. After opening the attachment, I was hit with a sense of dread that made all the hairs on my body stand up. It was a photo of me taken from my kitchen window. I was sitting on the couch, microwave dinner in hand, and the news was on the TV. This photo had been taken just a few minutes before I received the email. At this point I was terrified, but in hopes that this person would leave me alone, I decided to not call the police. I made sure all of the doors and windows were locked, closed all the blinds, turned off every light in the house, grabbed a knife from the kitchen and locked myself in the room. Night came and I was too frightened to go sleep. I put my phone on silent to avoid any noise and laid down staring up at the ceiling, listening for the slightest noise. At some point my body gave in and I fell fast asleep. I awoke to the sound of dishes suddenly clanking together. I sat up in bed and listened for a while longer until I heard what sounded like a chair being dragged lightly across the floor. I got up slowly and grabbed the knife I had left on my bedside table. My stomach was in knots and I had already broken out into cold sweats as I reached for my doorknob. Unlocking it caused a small click that in a moment sounded like the loudest noise I'd ever heard. I pulled the door open and peeked my head around the door frame into the hallway. I looked towards the living room, but it was much too dark to see anything that far away. I stepped out into the hallway, taking each step as lightly as possible. My heart pounded as if it was trying to escape my body. The door to my mother's room was still closed like it had been since she left. I managed to make it to the living room, but I did not want to turn the light on and notify anyone of my presence if they weren't aware already. I glanced over at the door and noticed that there was a chair propped up against the handle that I hadn't put there. I had almost no time to comprehend what that meant before I was grabbed from behind and a hand was clamped over my mouth. The knife had almost slipped from my grasp, but I was able to hang on to it. I turned it around in my hand so the blade was facing behind me and swung it back as hard as I could into the attacker's leg, causing him to let out a loud cry in pain. He loosened his hold on me and I saw that he had a knife of his own. He began trying to say something, but he was interrupted when I yanked the knife from his leg, turned around and sent it deep into his stomach. He let out a large gasp and his arms dropped to his side. The man fell to his knees and then face down on the ground. I rushed to find the light switch. After a few seconds of feeling around in the dark, I found it. I flipped the light on and looked down at my hands. They were covered in blood, so was the light switch and so was the knife. I turned to face my attacker. He looked much smaller than the man I had seen in the driveway video, but he did have a black hoodie on. I grabbed the man by the arm, turned him over onto his back, and what I saw froze me in shock. The person who attacked me inside my home was David. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Why would he do something like this? Was he going to kill me? We'd known each other since 3rd grade. He wouldn't want to hurt me. Tears began to stream down my face. I had just killed my best friend and I had no idea what was going on. After what felt like hours of thinking and crying, I decided it was finally time to call the police and explain what occurred here. When I stumbled into my room and picked up my cell phone to make the call, my crying only intensified. There on my screen was a text message from David sent just an hour ago. "Hey man, I don't know how to explain this, but someone is after us. I'm sorry. I'm heading over there now. I have the key you gave me. We'll be more safe if we're together. Read the text message." Just then I received 2 emails from the encrypted address. I selected the first one. There was a link inside. I couldn't open the link from my phone, so I powered on my computer and typed it into the Tor browser. It opened up the dark web page Mercy Kill that David and I had been browsing a few days earlier and took me directly to a video. The video was in glowing green night vision and the camera was hidden in a high place. I instantly recognized my own living room and I knew what was coming next. I saw myself stab David in the leg and stomach. I saw him crumble to the ground, slowly creating a puddle of blood. The video was titled OOPS, and just below it there was a banner that said, "Thank you for your submission." At this point my sadness became anger. I swore that I would get revenge on whoever forced me to do this to my best friend. I snatched my phone from the desk and proceeded to open the other email. This email had an attachment. I clicked on it and a picture opened up. I turned my phone on its side and the picture enlarged on my screen. The photo was of me. I was on my knees beside David's body, hands covered in his blood, tears running down my face. What disturbed me the most was the angle the photo was taken from. It was from a different vantage point than the video. The only way anyone could have taken this picture was from inside the house in the hallway. As I started putting pieces of the puzzle together, I heard the door to my mother's room creak open. I guess you could trace my current situation back to two factors: my New Year's resolution and my weakness to aggressive marketing. It started this Christmas, that I returned home after a long time. It was nice to see my family after being abroad and constantly on the road, working. Unfortunately, my employment makes me travel a lot. You see, I am a public relations manager for a big company, and this forces me to be in all kinds of different places, all over the world. Of course, I don't complain, and traveling is always a beautiful experience, but you can get homesick pretty easily. Now, having traveled pretty much everywhere this year, I managed to attend all sorts of events, mainly music concerts from bands that very rarely visit my home place. From Muse to Dream Theater to my childhood love, which was Manowar, and then back to rock music with Sum 41. I am sharing these moments because they were what flared up my old passion. The love I used to have for playing music myself. After spending the first few holiday nights at my parents' place, I got to their basement and rediscovered my old electric guitar and my amplifier that I had almost forgotten there for more than 6 years. You can imagine that the playing was very clumsy, but I managed to pull out some chords and basic melodies. My job had made me forget about music, but now that I found my passion again, I vowed to not lose it again. It was honestly a wholesome moment when I managed to relearn some old songs and play them, all singing out with the family like we did back when I was just a kid. Unfortunately, reality hits you no matter what you do. While preparing for my flight home, I did pack my guitar and a small practice amp I had just bought, but I knew I wouldn't play with them that much. Next week I would have to travel again, and my schedule would be really busy, so realistically I would very rarely even touch the guitar. Nevertheless, I had started looking for some guitar gear, and since Google is smarter than me, while I was doing my research, it started bombarding me with ads about small portable instruments that you could easily learn. Normally I just ditch such kinds of ads, but this time they looked interesting. A small instrument that didn't need extensive practicing and that I could play with any time? This actually sounded practical and interesting. And the prices weren't too shabby either. I started by getting a kalimba I saw on Facebook. My order arrived around 2 weeks after I made it, but of course with all my traveling I got to actually unbox it much later than planned. It was definitely not as hype-worthy as advertised, but it definitely was fun. Of course, the 2 hours of practice and you are going to master a thing was total bullcrap, but I used my knowledge in music theory and became pretty good at it soon. I actually took it to my next trip and managed to play with it during the short time that I was in the hotel. After that I got hooked. I decided to make a small collection from all the pop-up ads I was getting on my social media. Ton drums, flutes, mini practice guitars and mini saxophones, you name it. It was quite a fun hobby to have, and my friends were impressed by all these instruments, especially the more exotic ones. I have to be honest though, I was also proud of all the toys I had accumulated. In the back of my mind, I kinda thought I was hoarding on useless stuff, but in general, I was very pleased that I had restarted to play music. And with a bit of effort, I managed to keep my collection tactful and neat. It was nice when I was packing for work trips now. After gathering the necessary clothes and items, I would briefly go through my instruments and pick which one I would love to play more this week. Honestly, it was like a child selecting the toys it wanted to get for a vacation with its parents. Eventually, however, as it always happens with collectors, I run out of things to collect. It wasn't that there were no more instruments for me to buy, but basically everything I could get was a different version of the same thing. I might be an impulsive buyer, but I still had the understanding to not get random stuff just to get my fix. I did want, however, to find some other instrument I might have missed. From pop-up ads I turned to more proactive ways and started to search myself. I got a few things that I had never even seen before, but eventually, these ran out as well. I was pretty certain that I had gathered all there was, but something in me still wanted to search for something so exotic that was just not sold commercially. A limited edition musical instrument for the selected few. I had a stupid idea that seemed so silly that I was not even daring to tell somebody else. They would laugh at my naivety. I kinda wish I had done so now. Me becoming the laughingstock of my peers would perhaps be enough to stop me from actually following my stupidity. I knew that in the dark web one can find supposedly anything, although I had never navigated it myself. I always thought that this anything was just referring to drugs, snuff films, excessive violence scenes and other deranged projections of the human psyche. I really didn't believe you would find simple things, such as musical instruments in a place like that. For me, music has always been about harmony and artistic expression, with the occasional heavy metal inner turbulent shakedown. What did those have to do with murdered puppies and live-streamed rape scenes? In the end, however, I indulged in my curiosity. I started navigating the dark web. At first, it was completely pointless as I had no idea what I was doing. But I persevered, and in the end, I started understanding how to work around the complexity of the web. At first, I got normal stuff. Good guitars, basses, and others, in an awfully cheap price, which made me question their authenticity, or the way they reached the seller's hands, but in time things got progressively disturbing. I visited websites that said they had traditional string instruments with animal intestines instead of PVC strings. Exactly as they were meant to be played from the start, as one of them claimed. I don't know how would Peter react to such a, really. One of them even claimed to use strings made from humans as they produce a warmer tone with much more sustain. I didn't really believe this crap, but it was bizarre. And from strings to percussion. I can't really describe how many websites advertise using real skins of animals and or humans as the drum surface. Some even claim to be utilizing a setup of wood and bones for the rest of the instrument. I was ready to close the browser software for good when I got a pop-up. The irony struck me hard. It had started with pop-up ads, and now, after so long, I got another one in a place that a few months ago I wouldn't even be thinking of visiting. It was an ocarina. That was almost enough to turn me down already. Don't get me wrong, I love the ocarina sound, but I had gotten many myself already over the past few months. So, I was almost ready to close the ad and go to bed, but I decided to read the rest of it, just because. Not your typical ocarina, said the ad. Yeah, right, I've heard this before. It's like all marketing specialists graduated from the same school. This ocarina has been handcrafted just for you, and we make one unique instrument with exactly the tone you would desire. There never was, or never will be, another instrument like this produced ever again. We take pride in making one instrument for every customer. Interesting. I had no idea how they would do that, so my skepticism kept me from going to the purchase window still. Have you ever owned an instrument that you cannot hear, but you can feel, with every single molecule of your body? Well, try us. The Infusion Ocarina is truly a work of art, specially made for you, the most demanding musician. 30-day window return policy, no questions asked. Are you ready to take your music to the next level? Shit, that was intriguing, I cannot deny. And it was just $50, so, worst case scenario, I would just throw it away or return it. No big deal. It wouldn't be the first time anyway. I did check to see if that tool was made from any freaky material. I was pleased to see that it was just made from maple and ebony. I moved on to the customize and purchase option. There, I had to laugh. There were no questions about what kind of sound I liked or what other preferences I had. It just asked for a few general questions, but not anything too personal. It was more like making a sketch of my character than getting my preference. I really didn't think their claims were legit at this point, but I continued anyways. The last part was the mailing window, and it was the strangest thing so far. The thing would arrive in approximately 2 weeks, during which time I would be on another job trip in Utrecht, Netherlands. Therefore, I gave the address of my local post office so that I would receive the parcel after coming home. The moment I clicked on the location I wanted, the system changed it automatically. The address given was the address of my hotel in Utrecht. What the fuck? How was that even possible? I tried adding the delivery address I wanted again, and it switched back by itself. This was mesmerizing, and honestly, scary. I had the bright idea of changing the preferred delivery date to a day that I would be home, and this time, my address was not messed up with. I was really scared that the retailer apparently knew personal info I had never given. At this moment, I really wanted to just stop everything and never get in that site again, but I figured out that, since they already knew that much about me, I might as well order. Now I really wanted to know how deep the rabbit hole was. And so, I purchased it. I remember while pressing the confirm button that I was reading reviews from other customers. You have to get this, a lifetime experience, my life was changed forever, any other music is simply inferior. I was now so curious about that mysterious thing, that I couldn't wait. I opted for the fastest delivery date, and sure enough, I received the parcel a few weeks later from the receptionist of my hotel in Utrecht. Back in my room, I opened the package. The ocarina was colored partially light brown and partially black, basically the colors of the woodwork used. When I turned it around, however, I read the capitals JM, written in dark red color, with calligraphic letters. My initials. Why were they written on it? I had never given my real name. How much did those people know about me anyway? I should have never played the damn thing. But I almost felt like I wasn't controlling my body, as I was bringing the ocarina to my mouth. I played the first note. I could hear nothing with my ears. However, I felt chills throughout my entire body. It was like the sound was coming from within me and I could only listen to it in my head. It felt like my soul was pulsating instead of the air, producing an otherworldly soundless tune. I had to keep playing. I already knew how to play an ocarina, and the infusion was tuned like a normal one. I played songs that I had learned before, but it felt like I was hearing them for the first time. It was the most melodic thing I had ever heard, but it was also terrifying. It felt like I was running through all human emotions at the same time. I was happy, I was scared, depressed, and shocked at the same time. All the sounds had faded around me, and it seemed like I had my heartbeat and blood pulse for percussion, perfectly in tune with my ocarina. I had never felt like this before, experiencing every emotion I ever had in one go. I finished my last song, tears streaming down my face. I heard a car passing by and the normal sound it makes sounded like a cacophony of a million terrible things. I cringed so hard at the noise. Then I collapsed. When I woke up, I realized that any kind of sound seemed false to me. I tried playing with the kalimba I had with me. It sounded awfully out of tune, and the normally southing tunes were now all the wrong sounds. Even my own voice echoed like a banshee's in my ears. I looked at the ocarina. It was on the floor, where it had fallen after I had faded out. I picked it up and hesitantly played it again. The feelings overwhelmed me again, like they had done before. It was the only beautiful sound in the whole world. That night I didn't sleep well. I was ravaged by nightmares of dark figures hunting me and mocking me. In fact, since that fateful day I haven't been able to sleep in peace. I've been having constant nightmares since then, and they get worse by the night. My life hasn't been going better as well. I am constantly tired by the loss of sleep, and the worst thing is that I grew to hate every single sound in the world. I tried getting back to my beloved guitar back home, and it was so terrible that I honestly felt that the noise it made as I was breaking it into pieces was almost better. Same thing with all other instruments. Pieces of junk, all of them. I tried to find comfort in the arms of my beloved girlfriend, but she wouldn't understand why I didn't want to listen to a word she said. She tried to comfort me, but her annoying voice, which used to make me smile every morning I woke up, was unbearable now. I sent her away telling her that if she didn't shut up, I would go insane. She left me wiping uncontrollably and cursing me loudly as I was covering my ears to avoid the noise. The sleep deprivation was getting to me. I started mixing the creatures I was seeing in my dreams with reality. I started believing they were real and were drawn to me by the tunes of my ocarina. For some reason this makes so much sense when I think about it. Honestly, I hope they are, so that I will get to stop suffering this awful, noisy and out-of-tune world. My only happiness came from playing the ocarina. While I was at it, all my demons would subside, and all the outer sounds would stay silent. My entire existence was focused into my art. I would play it until I had no breath left, and collapsed on my bed, where legions of unspeakable things would haunt me until I eventually woke up, drenched in sweat. I did manage to find a small comfort, however. In a desperate move, I pressed 2 pencils deep in my ears, destroying my eardrums forever. The pain was unbearable and I was screaming like a wounded monster, but finally everything went silent. After I called the ambulance, I remember smiling, since I was finally in total silence. The pain was excruciating, but at least it was quiet. After my admission to the hospital, I was brought for psychiatric evaluation. Fortunately, I was able to go home and was prescribed some medication. I accepted it, although I knew already that it wouldn't work. Since then, I've stayed home. I am permanently deaf now, but that's the least of my problems. The drugs are of course not working. The demons in my head are more real than ever before, and I live every day in fear and pain. Each morning is worse than the previous, and I don't know how much time I have before I go completely insane. The only thing I have left is my ocarina. I am playing it from dawn to dusk. It keeps the fear away and helps me find some serenity. Some will argue that this was the cause of my fall, but when I play it, the world truly seems like a better place. All in all, despite some minor inconveniences that come with this instrument, the end result is the most life-changing experience you've ever experienced. There is nothing quite like it. I strongly recommend you get one of those. It has truly made me happy. So this all started last night. It's one of those today I fucked up kinda moments. One of my friends is into hacking and shit and said he could easily hook up the onion links and whatnot to get me on there. He came over yesterday and set it all up. I'm no whiz at computers, so I can't give you the specifics or shit. Anyways, later that night I start the Tor tool and begin going at it. I find a few forums and began poking around. There was this neat little chill to being on the dark web, like sneaking downstairs to play video games when you were young kind of feeling. There's all this shit going on in there. The drug deals were the easiest to find, weed and an LSD everywhere. After a while of feeling my way around the dark web, I got into a gang site. I saw they were selling guns and one guy was trying to hire an assassin to kill someone. Honestly, I didn't think the dark web had that stuff, thought it was all a myth. Yes, the guns were cheap. I saw someone explain on Reddit once that if the guns are cheap, it's likely because they weren't clean. Nice. At this point, I'm a few hours into the dark web. I've seen some criminal shit and all that, but nothing you can't find on the strange parts of Reddit. Then all of a sudden I click on this one dude's username. I hadn't tried that yet. Well, that took me to the child porn forum. Really didn't see it coming. I mean, the shit I saw on there was, I almost puked. There was that moment when my stomach just sank. It was the kind of shit you'd see on CSI or NCIS, but not censored and right in front of me. I noped out of there after I caught a glimpse of the first pic. I figured I'd stay on for a few more minutes and then delete this whole Tor thing. I really didn't want to go back to the dark web. It's like walking through those haunted houses, once and done kind of thing. My heart was racing. I was back on the assassination forum, just frozen in front of my screen. I finally got myself collected and was about to turn Tor off when I looked over at the bottom right of my screen. Someone had sent me a message. The message read, "Listen, you're clearly new here. Learn how to protect yourself next time. It's clear you're here just to snoop. That's a bad idea on these forums. That makes you US. Get out of here, kiddo. We know where you are." It fucking hit me like a Mack truck. I never rerouted my IP or set up the VPN. I just opened Tor and went at it. I was sweating like a goddamn hog. I called up my friend and told him what happened. He told me to unplug my shit and pray. I had been on child porn sites and assassination sites. What the actual fuck was I thinking getting on this site thing, whatever the hell the dark web fucking is? So I unplugged my computer immediately. I also unplugged my router. My phone has 3G, but it'll be fine for one night. But that dude had said he knew where I was. I was on there for hours. Any one of those guys could have figured it out. The gangs, the assassins, the fucking pedos. I have no idea if anyone knew anything. It was midnight, and the stress and sweat made me fucking tired. I wanted to go back on the internet to rub one out and calm myself the fuck down, but 3G is too damn slow for porn. I say fuck it, and I just try and sleep. But for some fucking reason it was the noisiest night in existence. Not that it was actually noisy, but my ears heard everything. I could barely sleep. I have this old door at the front of my house that opens with the slightest wind. Here I am up at 2 in the morning, just beginning to drift to sleep, and then slam. The door opens and closes as loud as it can. I jolt up thinking it's them. I don't know which them, the police, the assassins, or the fucking Holy Spirit. I build up the courage to look out the window and it's just the door. I hate you fucking door, but I was actually quite happy it was just a fucking door. Every time that damn door does that, my brain goes from its rational self to believing in monsters in the closet all over again. It's funny the way the brain works. So cocky and sure of itself until fear tells it who's boss, and then the brain will believe anything. Well, now I'm really awake and the door keeps opening and closing, so I go and make a small sandwich. It's unhealthy as fuck, but who the hell cares? I'm stressed so bad and giving myself a headache, like a nail going right in through my eyeballs kind of pain. I go into the kitchen to get the peanut butter and I hear the rustling of leaves. I freak out again. I'm already on the edge, you know. I take a breath and think like a human for a second and look at my dog. Dogs are the best for exactly this kind of shit. She's sound asleep knowing well it was just a branch that fell in the wind. Her calmness and snoring reminds me to go the fuck to sleep. I finish the sandwich and finally get some shut-eye. I woke up this morning feeling pretty good. A good sleep is great for forgetting all the stupid shit you do. The sun was that nice golden color and the trees were particularly green. Astrid was barking up a storm and needed to go out. I let her out and she whizzes reminding me that I need to piss too. I get all my shit together for breakfast and I'm cleaning up the mess I made with that PB&J last night when I look out the window and see a cop car on the other side of the street. Not the normal cop car, the undercover one. That's it, they must have found me out. They know, why the hell else would they be there? I couldn't see the cop, the windows were tinted. I was sure as hell that was an undercover cop. I've seen plenty of them. I decided there's nothing much else to do but eat breakfast and go to work, and just hope that cop is here for someone else. In the time it takes me to get ready in the morning, I figured, for some reason, the cop would be done investigating. I hoped it was the new family across the street. It seems they may be hosting a brothel, cars coming and going at all times of the night. I open the front door and the cop car is right where it was. I try not to look at it. I don't want to stir up any suspicion, you know. I walk by it trying to act all normal. I turn the corner, go up half a block and look quickly behind me. The cop car is still there. I go up a few more blocks. The cop car still hasn't moved. Finally, after what felt like a 2-hour-long walk, I make it to the train station. I was basically drenched in sweat. Wasn't even that hot of a day. I'm on the train and my friend texts me a site. He says if your email is compromised, it'll tell you. I click on it and put in my email address. It doesn't ask for anything more, so I figure it's likely safe. You can also find it via Google, so I'm not paranoid and use it. It says OHNOPWNED. My head is racing at this point and I mutter under my breath, what the fuck does pond mean? At this point I'm in no fucking mood to figure shit out. I Google it. Apparently it means they know my email password. Oh great. Oh fan-fucking-tastic. I immediately try and change my password, but of course the internet connection on the train is so shitty I can't change it. I get to work and the first thing I do is go on my laptop and change my password. Great, that's taken care of. Temporary relief. I feel better in knowing that I was compromised and fixed it before anyone did anything. I'm not sure what else they might know, so I'm probably going to need a new credit card. That reminds me, I cashed checks yesterday afternoon. I wanted to check they went through. I opened the app all la-di-da and the checks were cashed, but $200 went to Amazon.com about 30 minutes ago. I didn't fucking buy anything from Amazon while I was commuting. What the fuck? I race to my Gmail, right when one of my bosses comes over for small talk. In my head I'm like, nah, now dumbass, I don't have time to kiss your ass today. Finally dumbass leaves and I open my Gmail, and yep, there's an email from Amazon. I open it, hoping my card got compromised for something stupid. Tell me this, why the hell would someone buy $200 of a shovel, and crowbar knife, paracord, canned food, and baby diapers? Yeah, baby diapers. The rest of it looks like an average Joe wanted to go hiking, except for the shovel and baby diapers. Well, now I feel like I'm drowning, like air cannot get to my lungs, there's no blood, I've gone fucking cold. My brain feels like it's swelling and repeating the same line over and over again. What do I do now? So then I go and check the address. Maybe Paddock guy changed it. Nope, it's my address. I call my dumbass boss on the phone. Oh, hi Jack, I don't need the scans right in dash. No, Mr. Smith, I'm sick like a dog. I think I need to go home. He comes over to check on me and personally see me out. He says to get better. He's genuinely a nice guy, but goddamn stupid. I then proceed to race home like lightning. I get home at about 3 p.m., the cop car is gone, there are no packages on my front doorstep, and I can hear Astrid barking. All seems to be okay as of now. Thank God, I feel genuine relief. For some reason I thought maybe the package was going to be delivered today, and that they were going to kill Astrid. Inside seems fine, nothing out of the ordinary until I get to my computer room. Then I notice the window is wide open, but the screen is down. Now, here's the thing, even if I can't recall if I left the window open, I know for sure the screen was up. It's been like that for a while. Yet again, temporary relief is cut off by a feeling of dread. I sit on my porch, no internet, no phone, scared out of my mind, watching the sunset and just listening. I live in the suburbs of a major city. There are lots of noises, but the ear is damn good in knowing what to hear when you need it to, or at least I hope it is. I watch the sunset, all its brilliant colors. The yellows change to reds dancing on the clouds to be overcome by a deep purple, and then night falls and just the street lamps give light. My house is on the corner and the street lamp is blocked by a tree, so it doesn't help as much as you think. I go get Astrid to go outside one more time before bed, and as I'm inside I hear a bang. It clearly sounded like it was from the garage. Astrid starts barking something fierce. She's a husky and I have never heard her bark like this before. My gut tells me it's something bad. Always listen to your damn gut, my dad always said. So I go back inside and I'm asking all you computer whiz people for help. Have any of you made this kind of mistake? What the fuck do I do? I honestly can't even describe this feeling. I'm just fucking scared, guys. My friend fucking abandoned me and told me not to contact him. Like, fuck him. I have my flashlight with me and I'm about to go out and check the bang. Wish me luck. So I go outside with the flashlight and Astrid, and I hear rustling in the leaves. Astrid is on edge at this point, so she is barking at it wildly. I likely woke my neighborhood up, don't really care at this point. I get into the garage and thankfully no one is there. Part of me wondered if those horror movie things were true and someone would just be standing in my garage or some shit. Then I realized the blood on the floor. Little droplets and splashes led a path to a broken chair. The leg was snapped and there was a good deal of blood on the chair. I sent some pictures with the post, hope it sends with this 3G bullshit. Astrid was smelling the blood. Good girl. Perhaps she can smell the guy and then we can catch him, or something along those lines. But nothing. She lifted her nose into the air and just did nothing. Great, my husky is as perceptive as a bunny rabbit. My heart was racing so fucking hard I actually had to take a breather. I just looked away from it all for 1 second. But my mind wouldn't stop racing. Even when I tried to calm down, it immediately went to the thought of how everything changed in 24 hours. Life takes unexpected turns, I knew that, but this. At this point I figured the police would understand. I had an intruder. It was time to call the cops. I never did anything with ill intentions, and now I was scared someone was trying to kill me. I kept Astrid close by, my ears were going wild. At one point a leaf fell and my neck swung around to watch a fucking leaf fall. I text my friend to question him about the legality of going on the dark web, just to be sure. Of course he is still not fucking responding. At this point I call 911 anyway and explain to them that I've had an intruder and that there's blood and so forth. The police come and I'm super fucking anxious, but I don't see how this could lead to questions about the dark web thing, so I just keep telling that to myself in my head. I swear to fucking God I knew I couldn't slip that out. Well, they come and see the blood and the cop is like, shitty intruder. I mean, I guess he was right, but still an intruder. Then his partner calls us over, and guess what he fucking found? A lens cap, for like a camera or something. It wasn't in the garage, it was just outside my house in the bushes. The one cop looks at me and is like, you got a spy on your hands. Like, holy shit, what? So then I asked them to take samples of blood and do the testing to figure out who it was. The older cop looks at me and goes, we're not forensics, and no one's died. I muttered under my breath, yet. The coppers then leave, having done nothing but point out the lens cap and tell me there's nothing they can do. They told me to get security cameras and wait for the intruder to come back. Security cameras sound nice and all, but I've seen on the dark web they have like a whole sharing site for that shit, and I can't hook anything up to the internet for now, so that's a no right there. I go back into my house and took some Tylenol. I just wanted my brain to stop screaming at me at this point. It was after all this I finally checked your posts. I saw one of you said to stop the package deliver. Fucking brilliant. How the fuck did I not think of that? It's amazing how I can't think straight with this stress. Like, oh, someone bought some packages, perhaps cancel it, dumbass. Jesus, what's wrong with me? I did it immediately, the packages hadn't even shipped yet. Bless, I saved at least that part, now to handle the fucking intruder. To make sure the dumbass door didn't scare the shit out of me tonight, I got a rubber band and tied it to the handle. Fuck you, stupid door, you ain't opening tonight. Tylenol wasn't doing shit, so I took some Advil, the nighttime one. I had no beer, so this is all I had. I finally fell asleep and made sure Astrid was right near me, just in case she smelled or heard anything. I woke up yesterday morning contemplating if I should go to work. I think one of you said to just take a sick day. That makes sense. The boss knew I didn't feel well yesterday, so he'd be inclined to believe me. I called him up and told him I got food poisoning and couldn't come in. His response was, don't worry, Jack, get better. My name isn't even Jack. Jesus, how is he the boss? Well, anyways, now I was off. I was glad I didn't have to leave Astrid alone again. That stress was just too fucking much. For the first few hours in the morning everything was quiet. Nothing was really going on. In fact, I quickly realized it sucked having no real internet. Everything took too long to load. I started playing some video games, but my ears didn't like it. They wanted to hear it all. So here I am playing some racing game on mute and the doorbell rings. While the hairs on my back stand up. Astrid starts barking and going wild, and I just sit there fucking frozen. This frozen thing has been happening too fucking often lately. I was waiting for the doorbell to go off again. I don't have a peephole or anything, so I just waited. Eventually, I heard the distinct sound of the UPS truck starting up and driving away. Honestly, that was the best possible sound I could have heard at that point. Now usually when I hear that noise I jump up like a dog thinking he's gonna get a treat as my mind tries to remember what Amazon package I ordered. Well, this shit must be Pavlovian or something, because I had the same reaction. Half the way to the door my brain turns on and reminds me I had no Amazon orders, and the weird ones were cancelled. I honestly didn't know what to expect, but even what I did expect was nowhere near as insane as to what actually arrived at my door. There were 3 packages. 2 were the ones that I thought I had cancelled on Amazon. There was the knife, and the rope, and even the goddamn diapers. But something threw me off. There was the classic Amazon tape on the package, but Amazon usually tells you your email. This one didn't, it just had my address. Something made me check the knife. My gut had this powerful feeling that something was out of place here. Sure enough, I take a closer look at the knife. Guys, I swear there was fucking blood residue on this goddamn knife. Now I don't have a black light or anything, but Jesus fucking Christ, that had to be blood. Then it clicked, my hands had touched the knife. At this point my brain just shut off. It was thinking so fast, simulating all the possible outcomes and simultaneously trying not to throw up, that it just shut off. I just stared at the knife for a solid 10 minutes trying to figure out what was going on. The last package was the strange one. I thought the diapers weirded me out. Oh fuck me, this next one was something fucking else. They were a bunch of pictures of little kids at the playground and shit. Yeah, this guy sent me his bloody knife and pictures. It was clear he was trying to frame me or some shit, right? Like, why else send me the knife and the pics? Why the fuck would anyone do any of this? I must have stumbled on the forum, and this fucking nutcase must be trying to frame me. That has to fucking be it. I was fiddling with the lens cap that the police found last night, and I finally took a good enough look at it. The lens cap was a Canon. Ha! I have a Canon. Wait, I have a Canon. I ran to my garage, swung that fucker's door open, and searched around for where I had stored my T3i. I don't photograph shit often. It was a gift from my great aunt or something. I kept it in its box right on the ledge above this old dresser. The box was there, but I had to check if the camera was there. For a few seconds I couldn't do it. I really didn't want to know the answer because I already did. But I was wrong. The camera was there. I sat down to have a minute to think. So he didn't take my camera and was spying on me? It just didn't make too much sense. How would him spying on me help him frame me? Now mind you, I am absolute shit at chess and strategy things, so it's not like I was even sure this would be the moves he'd make. I honestly had no idea what goddamn pedophile would be thinking. How the fuck would I? So then the next test was to see if the lens cap fit. It didn't even occur to me before that my camera was missing its cap. I mindlessly put it back on. It took a few seconds too long for the wires in my brain to piece that one together. So I was right, he did take the camera. I guess right. Jesus fuck, this dude was at my house twice, and Astrid didn't even notice. The camera turns on just fine, and there is an SD card in it. So I go to check the SD card and it's empty. I was confused out of my mind at this point. So I start talking to my dog. Yeah, it's always a good sign when you start legitimately talking to your dog. It wasn't cutesy talk, I was legit trying to ask her for help. God help me. So I did take this one photography class years ago in college, for an easy A that wasn't an easy A kind of thing. I do remember my teacher saying something how every camera has a few distinct pixels, like a fingerprint. So I go over to the pics of these kids and I find where the dead pixels are. I find 10 dead pixels. I flip my camera on and take a shot of my garage. It was too dark, so I took a shot of my house. Lo and behold, the same goddamn 10 pixels. I didn't think my heart could race any faster than that time I downed 3 Red Bulls. I was wrong. Then it fucking hit me. I just took pictures of my house and my garage with the same camera that took pictures of these kids. I am so fucking stupid. I mean, how didn't I see that? Why didn't I see that until after? At this point I just broke down in tears. Astrid was trying to clean him up and whatnot. She's a good girl, you know, really there when I need her. I was lost, guys. I wanted to post to Reddit to ask for help, but I could barely compose myself. I was a fucking wreck. I took a deep breath. I can't make any more mistakes. I also slapped myself a few times. My brain needed to fucking work after this. I seriously cannot afford any other mistakes. Whatever is happening, and I need to make it out of this alive and not in prison. I'm sure you guys have realized by this point my brain is not always there for me when I need it. Should I call the police or not? I really sat there and thought about this question for a good hour or so. If I do call the police, will the result be as I expected, you know? Like, what are they going to do? Think I am being honest about all of this? I mean, I did call the police last night, so I guess they have a record, but that camera tap was my camera. What if that blood isn't even the guy's blood? What if that's part of the setup too? The police would be more inclined to think I'm lying about all of this. But I don't have a dungeon or a basement or anything like those serial killers and shit have. So I guess I have that going for me. Wait, no, I don't. My great aunt died like 5 years ago. She had no family, so she gave the house to me. I haven't even been there in months. I've been trying to sell it, but no one would buy it. It's out on the island, so that place definitely has a cellar and shit. So I guess that's where the police would think I keep him. My brain ran through these thoughts over and over like some supercomputer trying to find the probability of getting arrested. My optimistic side was trying to tell me that you did nothing wrong, they'll figure out the truth and that you didn't do it, while my pessimist side was convincing me that they'll figure out you're innocent after they've killed you. In the end, I decided that it wasn't a good idea to call the police. Maybe it was just paranoia, but I could not take the chance of being framed for all of this. So what's next? I guess I have to get rid of the evidence, right? So I got a backpack ready and I was going to go out in the forests upstate and just bury this shit somewhere. I would also have to clean the blood, even though the police have it on record that it was there. So I have everything ready and I clean up the blood. I get back inside and I see a cop car down the block. It's just sitting there, but I knew. He must have given them a tip as well. Great, just fucking great. I jump into lightning mode, my adrenaline was going full fucking throttle. I just did not want to go to prison, I did not have enough money for a lawyer, and I had no idea how to get myself out of this mess. I put the knife and rope and shit in my bag and I set the pictures on fire with gasoline. Then they start knocking on the door, loud, real fucking loud, like I mean business loud. I put on the backpack and Astrid starts going ballistic. I start sweating more and more every second, I tell ya. I really could not fathom what was going on. I used to be a firm believer that humans were blind to drastic change. We've been to the moon and have all this tech and humans just look at it like it's nothing, or really good at fathoming changes, even when we thought it was impossible to get into space. But nah, I couldn't understand this shit, I was shocked and my brain was just going a mile a minute. I try getting Astrid to come, but she won't. I simply cannot leave her alone. I run out the back door and I unlock the doggy door I installed years ago for our backyard. I hop over the fence to my neighbor's yard. He's from Vietnam and has a shit ton of shrubbery, perfect to hide in even if it brings thousands of mosquitoes. I see the police in my house, their flashlights on and Astrid going insane and barking at them. She wouldn't hurt them, she was never trained to harm anything, or at least I keep telling myself that. I just really did not want them hurting my girl. I mean, in case you're wondering. I didn't think what I had done was the best idea. I just honestly could not figure out what the best idea was. But then I had the thought that burying this shit would be burying actual evidence in what looks like a fucking child murder. I couldn't do that. I could not just get rid of evidence, that's more fucked up, especially if some kid is hurt or some shit. I knew what I was going to do, I had to find him, and call the police. That was the only way I could think they'd believe me in all this shit. Yeah, it's a stupid fucking idea, I'm aware. Just then she squealed. They hurt her. I still can barely write about it. I don't know if she's okay or not. I hope she is. I hope they just impounded her or something. I don't know what the fuck I did in life to deserve this. One little fucking mistake and my life is literally upside fucking down. My dog is hurt, and I'm a fucking fugitive on the run from the police. The closest I've ever come to the police before this was a rooftop party. I waved as inconspicuously as I could to the bus, got off a few stops later and called an Uber. I arrived at the town a half hour ago. It is fucking hot as balls out. Mosquitoes are everywhere. I have this old map that I got when I was 12 years old by my dad. It has everything about Long Island on it. Here's to hoping it helps. I start walking to a forest nearby to bury this shit so I don't need to carry it right now. I have to write down where it is. I mark it on my map. After this is all over and I find this sick bastard, I'll let the police know where the evidence is. But now I'm in the middle of a fucking dark forest. I really wish I'd think things through sometimes. My flashlight batteries are still good. But I gotta tell ya, I swear I heard something. My uncle let me come on a hunt with him once. He told me that a fox sounded a lot like a human scream. Well then I hope there are foxes in Long Island. Right, so the screaming, I get out of the car and bury the evidence, and then I hear that terrible scream. I told you I couldn't tell if it was a fox or not, and part of me is still unsure. It was an ear ringing. It didn't sound like someone was in distress for sure, but it didn't sound good. It didn't sound like what I expect a kid to sound like. I'm not sure I thought I was going nuts. It sounded like some shit from a horror movie, all fake and shit. Maybe it was fake, no fucking idea. All I do know is that scream kept happening throughout the night. I remember the first night I was trying to understand what had happened in the past few days, trying to sit there and make sense of it all. 3 days ago I was a normal dude, now I'm a fugitive and probably an alleged child killer or something. Jesus Christ. It was mostly easy to ponder my current shitty situation given how silent it was, until the scream came again. Every time it happened it seemed to come from a different place. That was the most unsettling part about it. It didn't seem to really come from anywhere, it changed often. So maybe it was a fox, but it did not sit well with me. The moon was out that first night, it gave some lighting to the trees. I hoped it would stay out all night, but soon the clouds came. The clouds were low and moved fast to block my only fucking light source. I didn't want to use my flashlight or make a fire or anything. I have no idea who the fuck is out here, and no idea if they would be able to see either of those things. For all I fucking know, they already know I'm here and are toying with me like a lion does a gazelle. Once the moon was covered I got worried. A few feet in front of me was just darkness. There it was again, that scream, that loud deafening scream. This time it was closer, it had to be. But I couldn't see anything. I almost pissed myself when it got that close. I like to think of myself as a rational human, but right then and there I wondered if that was a ghost, a spirit, some fucking demon. It's incredible, isn't it? All the shit man does, go to the moon, all that, put us in a forest in the middle of the night and well believe in the supernatural. Fear can really do wonders on your mind. I tried my best to just breathe slowly and stay calm. I kept checking my watch hoping the time would pass by faster. I needed the goddamn sun to come back. I can't see shit here. I was so tired, my eyes could not stay open. My friend once gave me some mylar sheets for sleeping in the woods. I think they're to keep you warm. It was already pretty warm, like fuck I needed to be warmer. I contemplated sleep. It sounded good, but one part of my brain always came back saying it sounds like a shitty idea. My eyes started to close. I was sitting up against a tree and could feel my body begin to sleep. Then it screamed again, this time further away. I was wide awake again. Then there was another scream. This once I could tell was human. I could fucking tell. It had that specific cry in it that humans do. No dog, no shit like that. Whatever just screamed was a girl. She screamed once, that was it. No other noise like that throughout the night. It didn't matter. I wasn't going to sleep now. I just stared into the emptiness waiting for another scream, and hoping it sounded more fox than human. I woke up and the sun was back. The sky was gray and dead of color. I never realized I went to sleep. I was covered in leaves and wet. Must have rained, I guess, or that dew point shit that happens in the morning. I got up and my back cracked 1,000 times. I felt like shit and I was fucking hungry. The forest was quiet for now, just the sounds of the bugs and the creek nearby. It was nice to not hear that screaming for a little while. I got up and was covered in bugs. A centipede raced away from under my shirt. I almost vomited. This is why I never go camping. I needed to get a move on though. I was wasting time taking in the morning. I needed to go catch some fish for breakfast and then I guess find this psycho. There was still something odd about the forest, even without the screaming. It just felt dead, like gray all around. Even though it was the middle of summer, this forest felt dead. I mean, the leaves were green, but I don't know, they didn't feel like it. I kept walking to where I heard water from. You know that old adage of looking up while you walk. My dad used to yell at me all the time to look up so you can watch where you're walking. That shit only works for sidewalks in the city where the only obstacle is gum. Suddenly I tripped and fell on my face. I made a big fucking noise doing it too, so I got plenty worried. I was already sweating fucking balls somehow. If you could imagine, I was sweating more than balls. I looked down on what I had tripped on. It was a fucking snare. I untied it and scrambled away. That is fucking horrifying. I got fucking trapped. Who the fuck does that? I thought, maybe I'm close to where the killer is. Then I hope not, since I had made so much noise. But then I looked closer at the snare. That shit wasn't a snare, it was tied to a tree branch. I looked up and could see exactly where the branch had snapped. It wasn't a snare, that shit was a noose. I looked at it more closely. Sure enough, there was blood on one half of the ring. I just stared at it. Where the fuck was I? What was I doing? I am looking at a noose, a small noose mind you, not one you'd use for an adult. It just fit my ankle. Jesus fucking Christ, I honestly still don't know how to describe it. The moment was surreal. The noose just sat there, not going away. It was real. It was really fucking there. I touched it to make sure. I got chills down my spine when I did. Finally, after what felt like hours of looking at the noose, I stood up and started walking again. I had forgotten about my map. Fuck, what did I do with my map? I checked my pockets and it wasn't there. It must have fallen out while I was sleeping. Fuck me, goddammit. Now I'm lost in this fucking woods with no navigational skills. I just used my ears and listened for the creek. I kept following the noise, and kept not finding the creek. A few times I swore I had just seen the same tree. Then I remembered that thing from elementary school about using the sun. I tried that. It at least helped make sure I was going straight when I thought I was. I had no idea how long I was walking for. I kept hearing the creek but could not get to it. Is there something like a mirage for your ears? Maybe it's just the sound of the forest. I have no clue what the fuck a forest really sounds like. I'm from the city. I turned around to see if the noise changed. Sure enough it did. Well, I guess it's not the sound of the forest. In the middle of my little test I heard an engine. It sounded like a diesel engine on an ATV or something. I found the nearest bush and trees and ducked into them. The noise was actually very far away. It was very faint once I paid attention to it. I must have been the adrenaline that made it seem so close. I don't know. I listened and all of a sudden the motor was gone, back to the forest and creek sounds again. I sat in the brush for a bit. It was nice. I found a spot that was nice and tight. I felt secure for the first time in a while. Jesus, that sounds so fucking stupid. But it did. I stayed there for a bit letting myself calm down, and then I took a piss and had to get walking again. My legs were tired, my stomach would not shut the fuck up, and my mouth was as dry as a desert. It felt fuzzy, it was so dry. My head started to pound. I get that when I'm dehydrated even a little bit. Brilliant me didn't bring a water bottle on the journey. I figured I'd be able to find the creek. I have no idea when I'll see water again. I sat down to take a break. My legs were all wobbly. They were done. I needed to rest. When I sat down, I heard the distinctive crushing of leaves. Again, I bolted for cover. My legs were sore beyond belief, but adrenaline did its thing. I was hiding now and just listened. Crunch, 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 and then whatever it was ran away. It could have been a deer, I guess. How do you tell the difference between 2 legs and 4 just by ear? I looked at my legs. They were shaking. It must have been 100 degrees out today. It's been an insane summer. Seriously, I hate this heat. I lied down and just relaxed finally. My legs were very happy with that plan. I was ready for a snooze. Then I remembered why I was here. This isn't a fucking hike in the woods. I'm trying to find this fucker so I don't go to jail. I few hours starving and thirsty and I forgot I'm a fugitive. I try getting back up but my legs are fed up. I need to take the nap. I roll my head all the way back, but instead of seeing more forest, there's a cave. A little hollow cave, something I imagine bears would sleep in or something like that. The cave was a little below the ground, like there was a defy that led to it. I stood up slowly, as my legs still hurt, and tried to see if there was anything in there. It is summer so I don't expect any bears, right? I'm not really sure how bears work. But then what was in there, somehow was worse than a bear and more unbelievable than that noose. There were 2 dead bodies in the cave, old and decomposed. They were covered in muck and leaves. I went into the cave to look at them better. They were small skeletons, about half my size. I remember when I saw King Tut's mummified body, they looked to be about the same size as him. Their eyes were gone, they were just skeletons. They were chained to the wall. The chain was rusted and broken, there was even a pile of shit behind them. I kid you fucking not, these poor kids slept with their shit. This guy is way worse than I thought it was child porn. No, this dude is fucking beyond insanity. I'm in his forest too, I'm here, those screams could not have been a fox. Look at this, those screams had to be human. But were they real like the noose? I mean, I wouldn't touch the children, I couldn't, I was sure they were there. I'll level with you, I've never really seen a dead body before, not like this. I've been to funerals of course, I've seen my grandma lay there and stuff. But with the whole embalming thing she looked more like a wax figure of the grandma I knew, and not a dead body. In funeral homes there's no smell, the skin is plastic and it looks fake. But here, no, it was very real. Bits of flesh were hanging off one kid's eye. I think the difference was that nature was doing its work in decomposing the bodies. That's really death, decomposition. I heard some leaves crunching at the mouth of the cave. I'll tell you, these past few days have been an endless crescendo of fear. I used to be scared of snakes, now I don't know what I can tolerate. 1 second I'm looking at 2 murdered decomposed bodies and not crying hysterically like I would have imagined. The next I'm freaking out and ready to piss my pants at the sound of fucking leaves. The sound fades away, I was really scared then that someone was going to enter the cave. What would I have done? I finally left the cave and again walked toward the sound of the creek. Finally I found the fucking thing. It wasn't even that large, not sure how I heard it from so far away. My stomach was roaring up a storm and my mouth was parched like I ate sand. I took my hands and began gulping the water. It was fairly clean water for the wild, see-through and all. There were some fish in the creek too. I have no nets and no fishing stuff, so that meant good old-fashioned makeshift shit. I took a tree branch and broke it in a way that could be used as a spear. It took me several times breaking the branch for it to have a nice point. I used a rock to really shave it. I was quite proud of myself. I made a spear. So I go over and start poking the fish with it. After a minute of that I gave up. I probably looked like a fucking dumbass to these fish. Some proud dumbass poking rocks with a stick. I looked back at the stick and the point was gone. Here I am standing in the middle of this creek with my feet soaking wet, and of course the thing decides to sweep me by my feet and throw me around into a rock. So now I'm wet, hurt and have no fishing spear. So it was at that point that I gave up and realized what level of dumbass I was. I figured if I wasn't gonna eat I should at least drink some more water. After my sorry attempt at fishing I crossed the creek and just kept heading in that direction. I had no idea where I was going. If I was honest with myself then, I would have just broken down and cried knowing I was lost in this forest out in Long Island. But in the moment something was telling me that I was going in the right direction. For hours all I had seen was an endless sea of trees and grass, with only that cave proving to me that I was in the killer's forest. But finally I found something else. It was a path. The rest of my walking was done off trail, but here there was a path. It was not a very well-defined one. You had to look to see it. But when you did, you notice that the trees were cut and the grass was kneaded in a way that showed it must have been a path. So I decided that this must be the killer's path for himself back into the woods, and I followed it. A few feet in and I noticed tire marks, just like that of an ATV. That must have been what I heard earlier. My stomach had been giving me problems, annoying me about eating. But soon it started to simply hurt. The cramping was intense. It made me buckle over on the side of this path. I had to try not to scream in pain. The pain wasn't that severe, it's just I am used to screaming for stomach pains. It usually just helps me feel better. I bit down on my shirt to stop the screaming and finally the pain stopped. But I felt the stuff below my stomach move. I knew what that meant. Fuck, I was about to shit liquid. I ran off the trail. I did not want to get caught on it. I flung my pants off just in time for the liquid shit to blast out. My head started to hurt again too, this time even more so. I don't know what the fuck happened. But now I feel like I'm getting sick too. I still don't know how I got sick. After the shit I began walking back toward the path. But my minor headache got worse and worse. I felt my head with the back of my hand and sure enough that fucker was warm, not on fire, but I knew it was going there. I must have not gone in a straight direction. It was hard to know since I couldn't focus on anything for more than 2 seconds. My head was throbbing something fierce. It happened finally. I broke down and started crying. I was in pain, hungry, running away from police in a murderer's forest, and now my senses are fucked and my head doesn't want to work. Fuck me. I was going to die here. My life was in all likelihood over. I tried to throw up, but I haven't eaten anything in about a day now. I heard we can go weeks without eating. I really hope that's fucking true. Because right now it feels like I am about to die of hunger. Finally my temperature started rising more. My brain was making no sense of anything. I had no medicine on me, nothing. I was truly and seriously. As if it wasn't bad already, I started hearing thunder. Now, I wasn't sure if it was real. Maybe it was the pounding of my head that sounded like thunder. But no, I saw the flash of light, and heard the crack of whip right after it. It was so loud it left my ears ringing. I ran a little more from it, purely in shock, until I tripped over myself and fell again. Great, now there's a thunderstorm to deal with. And as quickly as you can imagine, the sky got this dark, deep green, almost pitch black. It was raining yet, but I knew it was going to. I looked to my left, and in the corner of my eye, behind some bushes, I spotted what looked like a log cabin. I stood up and hobbled over to it. Sure enough, it was there, a real log cabin. It was very small, a one-bedroom thing. The wood was all rotted and the bed was destroyed, looked like mold had gotten to it. Part of the roof was bent and the whole cabin itself was warped. No one had been in this piece of shit in a while. The bed had a pink comforter on it, all torn up and dirty and shit. Yeah, I know, I thought the same thing. But it started to rain outside and the roof of this place was holding the water out at least. I thought through it however much I could right then. I wasn't going to lie on that bed, that shit would be morbid. But I lied down on the ground next to it. My eyes were aching, my head would not stop throbbing. I just wanted at least this sickness to end, this pain needed to go away. I lied down on the old warped floorboards. It felt oddly comfy in that moment. The storm started to roar. Bright lightning flashed every second. It was the most powerful storm of the summer. The green was really green. I mean, it looked like something you see on the news in Kansas. Out of the window of the cabin I saw some clouds rotating. No fucking way this thing was not about to form a tornado. That would be the icing on the fucking cake. If that happened, I would have accepted God as my savior and prayed. The clouds quickly fizzled. I guess God didn't want me today. The lightning kept going, and the thunder sounded like a July 4th fireworks display. There was all different sounds to the thunder. Cracks and whips, whooshes and the elephant stampede sounds, all of them in this one storm. The rain started coming down really heavy now. It was blowing through the window of the cabin, right through it. I was getting soaked no matter what. I'm not sure if I ever fell asleep. I remember all of a sudden the lightning had no noise to it, none at all. It just kept flashing as if in some infinite distance. The light of day started to return. My eyes were still open, but I did feel like I was asleep. I began to hear a voice, a small girl's voice, echoing in the distance. She just kept calling for her mom. But with no loudness or distress, just a soft, quiet whispering cry, "Mama," as if she was asking a question. I heard it over and over again. The lightning finally stopped. I could hear normally again. I heard the rain dripping off the trees and the roof and what have you. The sunlight was trying to come back. It was brighter outside for sure again. I no longer heard the girl. Her voice was gone. I wanted to leave this cabin immediately. I had the feeling as if someone was watching me. You know that feeling. The one embedded in all of us. I knew it. I knew I was being watched. Or did I? I mean, I didn't know if I was asleep or not. My head was clearly lying to me, which was the last thing I needed it to be doing right now. Now, you're going to think I'm an idiot, and let's be honest, for the most part one am. But I started shouting, "Is anyone there?" I am aware of how stupid it is now, but at that point my brain was so mushy, and I was so scared it seemed like the best thing to do. It wasn't though. Thankfully no one was there. I did notice though the forest seemed much more alive and happy. If that makes any fucking sense at all. The sun shone yellow through the trees, like what you'd expect it to do in the morning. But it was the middle of the day. I heard birds chirping, not sure if I even heard any before this. It was nice. At this point I really wished I was just hiking and could enjoy this. I've never really been hiking. But my memory drifted back to where I was and what was happening, as it needed to do time and time again. I heard a voice again, another one soft, humming a tune. I looked around and there was no one there. But I kept hearing this voice, very faint one mind you. I walked around for a bit and tried going toward the voice, but my mind was so foggy and useless I was sure where I was going. Finally I bent over and puked. I had been waiting for that. I felt a little bit better, but my head still hurt. I could barely see straight, let alone think straight. I heard the humming again. This time it was louder. I looked up and my eyes were all blurry. I was so dry I could not even see. But I looked out and there was a girl. A little girl in a yellow dress. Finally my eyes cleared up and I could see her. She was holding her leg and was just staring at me. She was young, blonde hair and stuff. She looked like my sister did when she was younger. Just like my sister. My sister passed away at about the same age, cancer and misfortune I suppose. Was this girl really there, or was I seeing Julie again? I could barely talk, my mouth was so dry and now filled with throw up. We just stared at each other. The sunlight shone through the trees right on her, as golden as her hair and her dress. I had to say something. Was it Julie? Was it Julie? I tried to shout with what was left of my voice, and she just ran off like a fox. No sound, nothing, just gone and out of sight. I don't even know if she was real. The forest noises kept going. The girl was gone, whoever she really was. My hearing started getting fuzzy and my eyes came in and out of focus multiple times. I just laid there on the forest floor, praying I would not be seen and unable to move. I just kept thinking about the light that shone on that girl. It all looked so pretty, so unreal. As my eyes came back a few minutes later, I looked around and the forest was back to its dead gray self. It must have been a concoction of my own brain. My head is losing it. I could feel the fever. The heat was so intense. Not only was it hot in my body, but it was hot outside as well, and that did nothing to help. I really truly felt like I was going to die there. I just waited for the fever to break. But at the same time I was starving and thirsty. So my brain thought even if I did make it past the fever breaking, I'd still be unable to think properly, and wouldn't have much time left. I have no clue what time it was, but the sun was starting to set. The clouds, even in the beautiful colors of sunset, were not so beautiful. They were an angry, evil orange. They only helped to make the forest look more dead. Finally I noticed I could hear and see again. I must have fallen asleep and the fever has calmed off. I was drenched in sweat and felt so dry it was incredible, honestly. I did feel better though, and I could stand. It felt so nice to be able to do that. Immediately I walked over to where the girl was sitting a few hours ago. The sneaker marks were there. She was there. She is real. I figured I'd go in the direction she went. Maybe I'll find her. Not even a few steps in that direction I heard someone calling out. I couldn't hear the words exactly. They were so muffled, but I could hear someone calling out. Like the creek, I turned around in a circle to try and find which direction to go toward the noise. I kept following it and following it. It actually wasn't that long before I noticed the voice was getting louder. I wasn't going to say anything back. I didn't want to make more noise than I already had. But I kept following it and suddenly I could understand the words, "Julia, don't leave me." It sounded like another girl. The voice wasn't muffled, it was loud now. I could definitely hear it. "Julia, Julia, is that you? Please be you. I looked down and there was a grate-like sewer cap thing. I'm no expert on sewage. It couldn't fucking be. Please don't be that this voice is coming from below. I whispered anyone there. The darkness below echoed it. I was sure if anyone was down there they would hear it. The girl responded with the same echo my whisper did. Mister, can you help us? Jesus Christ, there is actually a fucking girl down there. Someone else chimes in screaming for help. The girl tells her to stay quiet, or to whisper. I hear more people asking for help. Only one lady continues to scream. I throw the grating off. It was broken, thankfully. I turn my phone's flashlight on. It was still hard to see anything. Then I dipped down into the cellar. There was no ladder and I fell a few feet down to the bottom of this underground tunnel. I looked up and saw the small rope dangling. I really wish I had seen that earlier. The girl called out again. The tunnel wasn't lit, it was pitch black. My phone had fallen out of my pocket in the fall and I looked around to try and find it. Of course it fell on the side that didn't have the flashlight on and I couldn't see where the fuck it had fallen. The girl cries out again, help us, mister. An older lady yells to call the police. I scramble trying to find my phone, but I can't find it anywhere. Just then I hear footsteps from far away. It sounds like boots running. The girl says, he's coming, mister, run, leave. I try going back up the rope. It fucking rips and I fall on my ass a second time. I looks down the hall and I can see the flashlight coming. It's hitting the corner of the tunnel. There must be a turn in the tunnel right there. I try scrambling up the side of the tunnel, but no luck. I fall a third time. The footsteps are getting louder and the light is getting brighter. I feel my way around the tunnel wall. The little bit of light coming through the hole just wasn't enough to see. I hide until I couldn't see the flashlight's light anymore. Finally the boots stop. How are you doing today, darling? The man asks, in the most warped fucking tone I've ever heard. He didn't have a deep voice, he had a snively voice, a nasal one. I hid in the tunnel cringing as he talked to the girl. I'm okay, the girl softly responded. The man spat back, I'm okay, daddy. Say daddy, you little bitch. Yes, daddy, the girl responded while crying. The man walks over and into the light. I can see him finally. He looks at the broken rope. Was someone in here, darling? He asks. The girl responds, no, daddy, no one. He asks the older woman and then tells her to stop her screaming. I hate hearing your stupid cunt screaming through my tunnels. Shut it. He points the flashlight down and picks up my phone. No, fuck, Jesus fuck no. Suddenly he points the light in my direction. When I came back to, I thought I was blind. All I could see was the darkness. I wanted to see if I was still in this tunnel in the middle of the forest or was it all a bad dream. I asked softly, hello, is anyone there? The same girl as earlier responds back, yes, mister, we're here. Fuck, it wasn't a dream. I feel my way around till I feel these cold metal bars. Jesus Christ, I'm locked up in this fucking tunnel too. There was sharp pain in my back and I felt some numbness in my head. I felt around and I touched a certain spot on top of my head and felt another sharp pain. He must have hit me or something. Jesus, was my entire body in pain. The girl quietly asks, what's your name, mister? I respond, Sam. What's yours? Her name is Abigail. I ask her if she's okay and she says sorta. I ask about the older women. She wasn't responding to my questions. The girl said she didn't know who she was and that she didn't talk very much. She's not very talkative. After that little exchange, that's all me and the younger girl talked about. We just sat in the darkness for what felt like hours. There must have been no moonlight, or maybe it was cloudy because I could not see a single thing. There was no light, nothing even coming down from the little hole I fell through earlier. I tried thinking about how to get out of here, maybe pull some Shawshank Redemption kind of shit. But quickly I realized I had nothing to make even a shiv with, and it probably wouldn't work anyway. The entire tunnel was actually made of brick. Whoever made this shit went through lengths to make sure no one could just get out. I could hear them again, those same boots as before. They were walking much slower and much louder, but they were getting closer and closer again. Finally there was light, though not exactly for the reasons I would have liked to see light. He shined it right at me and said, "It's your turn." I asked for what, scared of the answer. What kind of thing is that for a killer to say? Your turn. My turn to what? To die. He said, and I'm not fucking kidding, she's useless. You're gonna burn her for me, you understand? He handed me a blowtorch and some firewood. You've made a fire before, right? I didn't say anything. That got me kicked in the stomach. There wasn't anything there for me to puke up. I guess there was the benefit of being starving. Well, you're going to make one tonight, you understand? I again didn't say anything. What the fuck was I supposed to say to that? I wasn't going to fucking kill someone. Are you fucking kidding me? This time he slapped me in the head nice and hard. The lady started screaming again. She was screaming something unintelligible. I've hit her too many times, it appears. Guess one more won't do no more harm. And I heard a loud thwack and the lady went silent once more. The little girl had woken up and asked what had happened. The man shined the flashlight on her. She was also wearing a yellow dress, same as the girl I had seen in the forest. She didn't look like my sister Julie. Could it have been the same girl? I wasn't sure at all. The man told her to go back to sleep. Again he told me to burn the women. He told me to respond or he'd kill the little girl. No one made any noise. There was no noise from anyone for a split second. The little girl didn't say anything, nor did the killer whose flashlight was looking me right in the eyes. The light hurt after hours of complete darkness. I said no. I felt a metal boot dig right into my side. I actually heard the crack of my rib, and boy did I feel it. That shit hurt like a bitch, and I could barely breathe afterwards. He turned the blowtorch on and threw the firewood onto the lady. I honestly could not believe what the fuck I was actually seeing. The blowtorch started to glow on the wood. The wood took to fire immediately. Must have been coated in gasoline or some shit. I've never seen wood just do that. The smell formed. The smoke smelled sweet and sappy though. Not really sure what the fuck was going on here in general. The lady woke back up and I saw the look on her face. She looked purely and firmly terrified. Her eyes were covered in tears and they just stared in shock. Then she started screaming again. The killer threw the firewood on top of her and her clothes started going on fire. She screamed so loud. You could feel it, all of her life's emotions, her friends and family, all of them, all of those emotions. You heard it in those screams. I final plea for help, screamed to the heavens if there was one. It was blood-curdling, but it didn't frighten me. The situation frightened me, but the scream made me cry like a baby. This woman was dying. I got up and ran toward her, but he had closed the gate to my cell again. All I could do was watch this poor woman burn. The little girl started to scream too. She kept asking for help. Finally the girl said something I could relate to. She didn't scream this, she just said it. I want it all to stop. I understand that, but let's be honest, what I'm going through is nowhere near as bad as what this poor girl has probably gone through. The smoke started to fill the tunnel. The women's screams finally stopped and the sweet sappy smell the wood burned is turned into a disgusting overburnt flesh scent. It was absolutely disgusting. I was breathing in the ashes of a dead woman I didn't even know. The smoke got worse and worse. I heard the girl coughing and crying for help. We both were yelling at this point. The man was gone, it seemed. We were screaming and I heard a bunch of other people screaming. Other girls, It sounded like there were even little boys in here too. Jesus Christ, how many kids were in this tunnel? Honestly, none of my words can properly convey the scene. There must have been dozens of kids in this tunnel, in different sections of it and shit. I have no idea how to explain it. It was just horrible. I heard dogs barking in the distance. Their barks grew and grew. Through the hole at the top of the tunnel, a flashlight shone in. A man with a deep voice yelled down, "Is anyone in there?" I screamed yes. The little girl didn't respond. I hoped she was okay. I could barely breathe myself, between the smoke and my broken rib. Suddenly a bunch of police came storming into the tunnel. A dozen flashlights were on us. The girl was knocked out and so were a bunch of other kids. They started looking at the kids and asking if they were all right. One cop came over to my cell and shined the light in. "Is that him?" asked the cop. Another responded, "He fits the description. Lock the bastard up, rough him up a bit while you're at it." Are you fucking kidding me? The killer must have murdered the lady, then called the cops or some shit, must have gave them my description. He won, he set me up and got away with it. I was already beaten up pretty badly. But the police couldn't resist some fun hurting an alleged serial killer. I wouldn't blame them if they had had the right fucking guy. We get out of the tunnel. I'm finally above ground again. I now have a bloody nose, a broken rib, a black eye. I mean, the list goes on. I was in a lot of pain. The police officers charged me with rape, kidnapping, murder. That list went on as well. I saw them take the kids out in stretchers. There were several ambulances and the medics were rushing into the tunnel to take all the kids out. The first one out was actually the body of the lady the psycho had burned alive. She was contorted and her mouth was still open, but she was burnt pretty badly. Her skin was melted and parts of her looked crisp. I think I caught a glimpse of some bone. There was no life left in her, yet still so much movement. She must have really wanted to keep living. That was a strange thing to see. The next one out was a young boy in a blue striped shirt. The shirt was all bloody, but he looked like he was still alive. At least that's why I imagine the medics rushed into the ambulance and not the lady. "So you tried burning the place to the ground before we got here, huh, you sick fuck?" The cop pulled me out of the trance. I was waiting for the girl who was across from my cell, the one in the yellow dress. "Officer, I swear to you, it wasn't me. Why would I lock myself in the cell?" The cop retorted, "I don't know. Don't have the mind of a sick fuck. Playing chess games, I'd imagine." "That's a fair point. Maybe I locked myself in there to fool the police." "Then where's the guy who called the police?" I asked. The cop said he left because I tried burning the place to the ground and he wanted to get out of there, logically. I tried explaining that the killer's fingerprints would be everywhere. He said they were sure forensics would prove them right. Finally, the girl in the yellow dress came out. She was coughing something fierce. "Look, officer," asked the girl, "the real man set the place on fire and locked me up, as her." Asked the young girl, "Huh? You mean the one that can't talk because you almost killed her? Fuck you." "Officer, I swear I'm being set up. You don't have the right guy. He's using me as bait to get away. He's still out there." "He's still out there. He left and is on the run. If I get locked up, I'll move somewhere else and keep killing young kids. This will never end. I needed to end this. I don't believe in no God, not really, not a church-going person, but if perhaps destiny wants me to save some fucking kids, I'm going to do my damn best to do it. Make lemonade out of lemons, right? That's kind of stupid shit." He threw me in the car. "You say one more word and I'll knock those teeth out for you. Understand, fucko?" He radioed another police officer. "Hey Jim, this is Alex. I've got the perp. He's a little beaten up from the guy who found them, but it's definitely him." I would have said something, but I knew this officer wasn't going to listen to me for shit. I would have to wait till I got back to the station. Or I had to gain this officer's trust somehow, prove that I wasn't the guy they were looking for. Officer, I know where the evidence is. I buried it somewhere. Jesus, that was fucking stupid to say without any context. What the actual fuck is wrong with me? The officer looked back at me and said, "We already found the evidence, dumbass." That's a fair point. Nothing in that little box matters anymore now that they have the entire underground tunnel system. I noticed the sun was rising. Some blues and yellows began to emerge above the tree line. The ambulances put their sirens on. There must have been 5 of them. The police cars led the way. The whole convoy took a while to exit the part of the forest we were on. They followed the small trail. I saw the cabin that I hid in the storm from. That feels like a lifetime ago already. I think that was yesterday though, wasn't it? It didn't look any different in the morning sunlight. It looked just as terrifying. There were a ton of bumps and bangs along the road. I noticed the officers would look back often to make sure the ambulances were okay. One of them turned back to me and asked, "So how long have you been here? How many have you fucking killed and shit?" The other cop told him to stop talking to me. The drive out of the forest through the path took quite a while, must have been at least half an hour. The sun had risen up by that time and the temperature was starting to rise again already. When we finally got back on a real road, it felt so nice and smooth. The road was clearly old as well, all cracked and shit. It didn't look like anyone had driven on this road in a while. I noticed a lot of the leaves were dead, which is pretty strange for the middle of summer. There were some bare trees even. It was intense just how much like fall this one part of the forest looked like. It was unsettling. It looked like the police were unsettled by it too. "What the fuck is that?" the one cop yells out. I jar my head up as the car comes to a sudden stop. My neck lurched forward and my head hit the gate in the car. After I rubbed my head, I looked out the window and saw her. The other girl in the yellow dress, the one that looked just like Julie. She was on the ground crying. She looked as pale as a ghost. The police jumped out of the cars immediately and ran over to her. The poor girl could barely stand up. Her dress was all torn and her feet looked bloody by this point. I wondered what happened to her sneakers. They finally get her back up and she vomits a bit on one of the officers. It looks like she got sick too. She is clearly mumbling something at them while crying. The police officers stare back at me in the car. They stand the girl up and bring her over to me. "Excuse me, little girl, but is this the man who hurt you?" She said, "I don't know, say something." So I said, "Hi, are you okay?" She shook her head back and forth. "No, not him." The officers looked instantly panicked. They were looking around as if they were deer caught in the headlights. They rushed the girl back over to the ambulance. Suddenly the ambulances drove by, being led by 2 cop cars. It was just our car in the middle of this forest. Backup should be coming in a little bit. I think we should just hang tight. One came over to my window. "Hey, who the fuck are you then?" I said as calmly as I fucking could, "I'm a guy he kidnapped to set me up as the killer, just as I told you." I gestured to the handcuffs. "Can you please uncuff me?" He looked at me. I saw the sweat pouring out of his face. He unlocked the cuffs and asked if I was all right. I told him I was fine, but he didn't seem to care. I noticed the 2 of them kept moving their heads back and forth like nervous birds. I picked up on the feeling too. They were right. We were being fucking watched. "Hey man, I have a strange feeling here. Where is this backup?" The other one just shrugged. The feeling was getting worse. The forest quieted down. Someone else was definitely here. But which way? In front of us, to the side, over that slope in the forest, behind those bushes, up that slope, or down the road behind the trees? The feeling is only so useful. We all knew someone was watching us. Not one of us knew where he was. Bang, bang. 2 gunshots ring out. The police officers fall like bad mannequins. Their bodies made a loud thud as they hit the ground. I looked around trying to see where the shots came from. The forest went quiet, nothing moved, there was no way of telling where the bullets had come from. I peeked out the door and saw the blood pouring out of one officer, then I also saw his gun. I looked around one more time and saw nothing. Why didn't he shoot me too? Maybe he didn't see me in the back. But then again, why shoot the police at all? He thought he was going to get away with it. Staying in the car just felt like a bad idea, but if I was going to do it, I wanted one of their guns. The door was already open on the driver's side. All I had to do was move over and grab the gun and hide back in the car. Sounds simple enough, but I knew this could easily be fucked up. I took a deep breath and moved my arm towards the officer. My body began to slide out of the car and hit the pavement. I stopped there, no sounds, nothing, just the quiet forest. I unhooked the gun and grabbed and jolted back into the car. I looked at it and said to myself, well, at least you have a gun now. So why wasn't the killer waiting to shoot me too? Why did he leave me? If he had waited around, he would have seen that I was still in the car. Honestly, this is the one time my brain was useful during this entire charade. I thought he wanted me to get caught in the car with 2 dead police officers. Now, to add to the problem, I have a gun, one of their guns. I couldn't stay in the car and wait for reinforcements. The time to dip was now. I took a chance, one of the flip-the-coin things, and opened the passenger door on the right side of the car. I did it as slowly as I could, so that I could listen for movement in the forest as I did it. I put my right foot out, and once it had touched the street, I ran for brush. I crouched down in the bushes and just waited for the reinforcements, nothing else I could do. Once they came, I would drop the gun and say I got scared and ran here after the cops got shot. It was quiet, but I had the feeling I was being watched again. Maybe the killer had returned. I tried to listen, but with all the leaves, wind, and everything else, I couldn't really hear much. I looked to the cop car and I see him. I crouched back into the trees to make sure I was covered. He looked in the car. He must have been looking for me. He had a rifle. I'm not sure what type, but it looked like the kind a hunter would use. I stared at him like a hawk, and then suddenly his head popped to make eye contact with me, and he stared at me like a hawk. He went for his rifle and my brain kicked into full gear and said fuck it. I got out the gun and pulled the trigger. Thankfully it was loaded and the safety wasn't fucking on, because in that moment I was too stupid to care about them. I let out a few shots and the killer ran behind the car. He started firing some shots and I fired another 2. I looked at the gun. It wasn't a revolver or anything, and I had no extra bullets. How was I supposed to win? I shot one last time and then the gun just made a clicking noise. There was nothing left in the gun. When I looked back toward the car, I didn't see him again. I had no idea where he went, but now I was out of bullets and scared shitless. The sirens started as a faint echo, but then the crescendo of sirens as multiple cop cars pulled up to the one I was in. I saw a few officers rush up the hill on the other side of the street, guns and dogs ready. I threw the weapon down and came out saying, "Help me, please just help me." I broke down. Any composure I had left was gone. I started bawling and this one cop came over and asked if I was okay and who I was. A few seconds later I heard more shots go out, a few more, and then it was quiet all again. The radio on the officer who was comforting me went off. "We got him. He resisted, but we got him." That's basically the end. They took me to a hospital in Long Island. I had to be treated for dehydration and a stomach virus. I know it's been a whole month since I updated you guys. But the police had to go through my computer and eventually they ended up destroying it for me. They never pressed charges for me going on the dark web. I did find out though, The girl in the yellow dress was a cancer survivor. Her name was Julia and her family was happy to have her back. She was in the same hospital as me. Not even gonna lie, I cried when I heard that.